gentlemen, it is so great to see all of you here at the largest hospitality and real estate conference in Vietnam, Mid-Expo 2022. I'm Nhung, and I'm very pleased to be your host today. I would like to introduce the director of Savills Hotels and also the organizer of the conference today. Please welcome Mauro Gasparotti.
Everybody welcome to the Media Expert event. It seems that we are back in business. Hospitality is back in business. It was brutal, we know, it was tough time. We started 2 years ago. Somehow we got a bit of hit 2 years ago. Then we got completely knocked down last year. And this year is going to just be the recover. And we still get slapped somehow by whatever is happening around us. But the good news is that we're all here for one reason, is to restart. We all tried our best in the last 2 years. We know that we had to reinvent ourselves, get out of our comfort zone, reinvent our business, find demand somewhere. Hotel, we're trying to do everything. Travel bubble, sandbox, staycation, quarantine hotel, whatever it could bring a bit of a business. But now the business is coming back. So it's really the time to rebuild the hospitality. But rebuild what? We're going to rebuild team. We're going to rebuild business. We're going to rebuild hope. We're going to rebuild the whole market. And the first things we are doing today to rebuild the connection, the networking. We got almost 1,000 people that want to join this event. Unfortunately, we couldn't accept that many people. I think my team was very, very difficult to get it. So congratulations, you made it here. But it just gives a great idea of how people want to reconnect and move forward. But we have actually a much better chance not to just rebuild it, to rebuild it better. And conference like this just give an idea of a people's opinion into what it could be the future of this industry in Vietnam. And rebuilding it better means two things. One, today, I will ask every of our panelists to look into the future, to look into the hope that we have into the rebuild, but also to look into the problem that we always had to solve, what we define as our elephant in the room, the problem of the hospitality business in Vietnam. We need to get rid of this to really rebuild something better. So we have a great agenda today. I think we got a few hours to touch, a lot of speakers, a lot of information, a lot of network. Please stay until the end. Nhung, how the agenda will look like?
There will be 3 parts today, hospitality, residential, and also design. We have the first part, hospitality. We have Fenady from SDL will give us the latest regional performance updates. We have Mauro again to give some hope and some features. We have James Young to run a panel discussion on Vietnam recovery. Next one, we have residential talk.
We have a lot of people in James' panel.
Yeah, more
Yes?
females.
Okay, some email.
Yes, for this part, we have Paul from DFDL. We have a presentation, also Catherine from Quirk Global, and of course, a panel on the branded resident and hotel investment. And how about the next part, Mauro?
We'll move into the design part. We'll have 2 videos from Chiara and from Bill Bensley, video specifically done for this event, so please stay until the end. And then we have the last panel. If I can make it until the end to be a moderator, we have a great panel with some designer to discuss a bit into the luxury market and what we should do better. And after that, we have our networking night at, I think, 5:30. Our drink will start. We have a lot of to eat and to drink, so please stay until the end. 5:30, stay here for the panel, and after there will be a lot of things to just connect all of us.
And the Oscar night, right?
And the Oscar night, right.
Great. But before we start the event today, I would like to have a big thank you to the sponsor, the partner that support us to make it happen today. Of course, Savills Hotel team, very ambitious, but very patient, but we try so hard for this today. We have WeHub, the business development and networking community. We have Vin HMS, our long-term partner. Also, Liya Vin, the F&B sponsor who serve on the food and drink today for us. We have, of course, the Master Right Home and also Radisson Hotel Group, which on the panel later, and our new partner with Ceramics. I would like to say thank you to Daniel, Mui, and the Intercontinental Hotel team for bearing Mauro high demand on the quality. And also we have a lot of elite sponsor, hospitality sponsor, content partner, and media partner as well. So thank you everyone. Together we make it today. And now I would like to introduce the first presenter, Ms. Fenady Uriarte. She's the Business Development Manager of SDR. She told me that she got the latest data on last Thursday. So you are among the first one to know the regional latest updates. Please welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back here. It's been more than 2 years since my last travel to Vietnam, so I'm very, very excited to be here. First of all, before I start my presentation, kudos to everyone. Thank you for hanging out and being there. We have all high hopes, and for this session, it's really more about the good vibes. But before that, maybe just a little bit of reintroduction again. STR, what we do is we do hotel data. We help everyone from operators to owners to vendors to be able to have a better insights when it comes to the market performance. And we are also part of CoStar, which is the largest real estate analytics data in the US. And of course, we're branching out in Asia Pacific as well. So before I start with the numbers, just like Mauro has mentioned earlier, it's more about the good vibes. We really have seen many favorable signs right now in terms of travel. Just yesterday, it was my first travel out of Singapore for more than a year. It feels very, very normal, and probably you felt it too if you have been traveling in the past few weeks or so. All right, so as many countries are easing, we really have seen that even for Singapore, as of today, they're going to scrap off all those COVID testing for the vaccinated tourists, and that will drive more demand in the market. And what's next would be Thailand, May 1. In order to lure more vaccinated tourists, they also have scrapped off the mandate of testing. So obviously, in the next few days, we are going to monitor also the performance, how are the bookings are picking up for the Thailand market. And hopefully we can do this for the Vietnam market as well. So airline capacity is obviously increasing. We need to see how the domestic seats are increasing, but also the international seats. Generally, for the airlines, we've seen about 1.2% growth, but it's still about 20% down as compared to 2019 levels. But at least this will give us more opportunities for more demand into our market. When we look at, we try to ask respondents how they feel about travel. And we have seen that in July, obviously there's the Delta variant. There's a drop of about 32%. So fear is kind of a big issue and emotion that has affected our industry. But with Omicron, there's another drop, about 26%. But the recent one is there is an increase of confidence to travel. And this is good for our industry. So less fear means more excitement to travel, means more opportunity, more demand for us. All right, so what we are seeing here is as the fears reside, more and more people that we have seen based on our data are coming back to the hotel. They have been staying in the hotel. Previously, we have seen that countryside, the getaways, the beaches, they're like on the positive note, as you can see here. But the city breaks are also getting that much needed demand generally when we looked at our data. Now, when we compare the occupancy level for Southeast Asia, so here is mostly for the ASEAN, so the Vietnam I just really want to highlight. So we are comparing for 2019 levels. So why? Because, we can't compare to last year because it's just really difficult for us. So we need to compare when the market is really doing well. And of course, in 2019, you welcome about 18 million travelers. But generally, how far are we into the 2019 levels? It's still quite far, but as you can see from March onwards, it's really going up already. And of course, the goal is to reach that, go beyond that dotted line. So that is our 2019 levels. And what about the ADR? Now, this is quite interesting as well. We saw that, occupancy is still generally low for the Vietnam market, but the ADR is still also getting quite close if we look at different markets. And for Vietnam, obviously, during the Tet holiday, there's that uptick. And that is a good indicator that people are also willing to pay more during especially high demand dates or if there's a special occasion. Right. Now, for most of you who are operating a hotel or owns a hotel, right, we wanted to understand more. We did a further analysis when it comes to weekend and weekday rates. So those gray lines are the weekends. So we looked at it from January, and Vietnam definitely has had that uptick when it comes to the weekend. So there is an opportunity, especially during the weekend. So it's not like a flatliner like in the previous 1 or 2 years or more than, when everything is generally down. It's like a beating heart. We can still see some bits happening, and it's going up to the right direction, going on a positive note. All right, so we wanted to do further analysis, so I wanted to share to you, when we look at RevPAR, so going back to a little bit of data, RevPAR is a combination of occupancy and ADR. So we did the positioning matrix for the key Southeast Asia. So how do we look at this? So if the country, or let's say if your property, for example, are leaning towards the right, that they are growing on the occupancy, and going up will be the rates. So here, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh may be on the lower front when it comes to occupancy levels, but Hanoi is definitely higher in terms of growth of rate if we would compare that to 2019 levels. But please take note, this is only from a March perspective only. But clearly, this gives us an indication how those markets are moving. All right. Now let's look at some sunny destinations. So we did further analysis. Many of you probably are looking into the resorts versus the hotels in the city. So just in comparison, what we did is we lumped up resort properties versus those city or service apartment properties. So this is So this is one of the first case study that I wanted to show to you. So the Maldives, why am I showing the Maldives? Maybe there is some learnings that we can find out from the Maldives because of the source market. We know that Vietnam has been reliant with the Chinese tourists even before, but when we looked at Maldives, they were able to pivot some of their source markets, and this could be some of the learnings that we can impart for this session. So generally, quarter 4 of 2020, Maldives, because of their bubble, they were able to increase their rates and really have, by March, their occupancy level is at 75%. Now, this is what it shows based on understanding the source market. Yes, there are some cancellations because of the Ukraine war. I mean, obviously, that's another blow to our industry. We saw cancellations, but towards April, we see some pickup when we looked at the occupancy levels for Maldives. China has dropped in terms of the top source market, mainly because they're stuck there. They cannot travel, so we cannot rely, and we cannot really put them into the formula when we are doing our forecasting for this year or maybe for next year. So Russia is also on top from last year, but obviously that will change. But generally, when we look at the business on the books for the Maldives, is that even, this is based on March 2022 data, so just last month, their performance in occupancy pickup has exceeded same time of last year. So there are those shifts, and they are really shifting their source markets, understanding their source market. And I think this is also one of the key things that we might need to consider as we open for the Vietnam market. All right, so occupancy versus the resorts. For the resorts and the others are the lump sum of the city hotels, the service apartments. So when we compare Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, just to take note, for Vietnam, we took out the mid-scale and also the economy. But generally, what we have seen is the one that leads the competition in terms of performance for the others would be Indonesia. They have been traveling so well. So by the end of 2021 and compared to 2019 levels, Indonesia has really been open internally, and that's really driving their demand. don't feel bad if Vietnam is in the lower spectrum, because not all are really reaching up to the 2019 level. So, you know, if we look at it in the race, we're just on, like, everyone is in the starting point. So now that things are opening up, we really need to beef up all our efforts. Now let's look at RevPAR. So hopefully this gives some kind of foundation where we are as we build into getting more insights into the market. So Malaysia, Thailand, and up to Vietnam, again, it's really far apart from the 2019 levels for both if we compare resorts and the others. Now, in terms of rate, now this is interesting again. Now the rates, as you can see, so this is from January 2020. This is a long perspective. All the way to February, we really see that rate coming up for the resort properties. So interestingly, there is a demand, especially for resort properties or drive-by destination. If I would look at just Vung Tau alone, just to mention, in February, we saw almost 40% occupancy levels. So clearly, there is a demand when it comes to drive-by destination. This is for Vietnam, and if I would look at it in Thailand, obviously drive-by destinations like Hua Hin or Pattaya are also doing quite well, especially during COVID period. Okay. Now, this is for the RevPAR numbers. Of course, because occupancy is still on the lowest front, we don't really expect the RevPAR to be high, but still, we are seeing that upward trend. So those are some glimmer of hope for our destination. Okay, now again, let's move back to our RevPAR positioning matrix. I wanted to understand how are we in terms of those resort destinations. So we have here two examples. We have Da Nang and Phu Quoc. Phu Quoc is interestingly on the higher aspect in terms of occupancy levels. If you'd compare that to 2019, very close to Penang. Penang has been doing quite well. Da Nang, unfortunately, is in the lowest. If it's a competition, Da Nang is on the lowest front. But in terms of rate, Bali is also very low because they just really opened up. So not much happening yet for Bali market. But eventually, you know, everything will change as well. So it's always good to see where your competitive markets are also leaning. Are they going towards occupancy, or they're going towards the rate? Of course, always comparison to 2019 levels. All right, so let's look a little bit further, right? So some of the key points that has been like, you know, some elephant in the room, as you would say, would be the manpower issues. This is just an example for the US. US has had a great resignation. So, but when we looked at some ADR movement as compared to the wages, both are going on an upward trend. So this is really just posing some questions. It's like, what are the challenges for Vietnam when it comes to manpower? And I'm sure this is one of the key hot topics that we're gonna discuss for this afternoon. Like, moving forward, one of my favorite aspects of data is also looking at the forward occupancy and also the pickup. What I have here will be for Bangkok. So this is based on April 18 data, very, very fresh. But as you can see for Bangkok, yes, we do have some uptick in terms of rates from occupancy, but it's still very, very slow when it comes to May towards June and July. But this will change because they're going to open up in the next few days. So less hassle for travel, no testing, then we are expecting some uptick going to Bangkok market. And hopefully this will be available for Vietnam as well. Now, when we do our forecast, there's so many things that we have to consider. And obviously, Mauro also have shared earlier about that blow to our industry. So just before I finish off, I just really want to highlight inflation is one thing that we need to take note of. Of course, the pandemic is still there. It's still not yet endemic. There is an issue of global logistics. And for me, one of the three things that I want to leave as a question for everyone is really, what are you doing to mitigate the problem, future problem, when it comes to rising cost of energy, manpower issue, and also supply changes. So I'm sure with all these numbers and foundations of insights that I've given you, I hope this sets the scene for the discussion for the rest of this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you, Fenady. So we can take one question for you.
Okay.
So does anybody have any question for her? Our team will be ready with the microphone. Otherwise, she will be back for the panel discussion later, and then you can spend time to think about that. Thank
Yes,
you.
and I'll give the slides anyway, so you can bring that home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, please, Mauro, return on stage to deliver your presentation that you've been preparing for the last few weeks, I think?
Hours.
She was a fast machine, she cracked the motor clean. She was the best damn woman that I ever seen. She had the sightless eyes, telling me no lies.
I choose the song myself. I don't have the pointer. No, it's true. Okay, so I'll try, hello again. I'll try to keep it brief because I think we have a lot of other people with more interesting topic. Usually I tell story, but today I've been asked to also include some number. So I will try to tell you story by looking at some number. And my first slides will be to look at the 10 years picture of Vietnam growth. I'll leave you a little bit to digest this slide, which is not immediately easy to see. So pretty much Vietnam has all been about growth, very strong growth in the last 10 years, and we all knew it. So very strong pipeline, one of the biggest one in the region. Also grow not just in terms of rooms, but growing infrastructure, more airports, more demand. So we all had this strong growth coming to us. But what's interesting to see, if you read between the lines, that growth has not been always the same everywhere. So if you look at Ho Chi Minh City, for example, we didn't have actually many rooms coming in the last 10 years versus Phu Quoc, which has been an enormous number of inventory opening. Also, the type of hotel growth has been a different, based on the type of property. For example, luxury market, we didn't have many coming versus the condotel market, which is obviously, we have this wave of room coming. So what is interesting to notice that, yes, we had a strong growth, but was pretty much uneven, was pretty much different. And this will lead to the whole presentation today looking for opportunity by reading in between the line of this growth, looking opportunity, but also risk. Who is the first one that got all this growth to them was the operator. We went from 25 operator up to 64 in the last 10 years, and we are shooting up to 92 operator in the next 3 years. So we all know that a lot of operator in this room, they've all been looking for deal. I love this picture because many people take picture of me with the brand, so I'll pause it for a moment. And also a lot of local brands. Wink Hotel, for example, a lot of local are just coming with their own brand, but still a lot missing. So strong growth and operator grab all of them. So let's little bit look into the bad news. Let's look at what this growth has brought to us in terms of elephant. And the first elephant is the question mark of oversupply. Are we going to have an oversupply in Vietnam? And the straight answer is probably yes. Now, I'll let you read in a little bit the number. Today we have 127 branded property. We are going to have 261 branded property in the next 3 years. So we will double the inventory of branded property in the next 2 years. I want to pause a little bit for you to digest that number. So we have obviously an oversupply problem. But again, if you read between the lines, it's not everywhere the same. Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, only 28% coming in terms of additional room in the next 3 years, versus something like Ho Chi Minh or something like Cam Ranh, where a lot of products are there. I know that some of you has a project in Ho Chi Minh. There's a lot of room to come there. I think Peter from Melia is somewhere in the room, so that's not good news for them. But obviously, if you are still a good product, and if you still have a soul, and if you still have a quality, you should be out of all of this. Now, what this will lead to, as we know, it may lead to price war. So we may need much more flexibility into the rates because we need to capture the local market to survive. The second thing that we see coming as a problem is HR problem, which is already now a problem. Think that in the next 3 years, much more hotel will be opening and they need staff. It's good news for GM. You have a job for the next 3 years for sure. And let's move into the second elephant in the room, the second problem of Vietnam, which is our condotel friend. We've been hearing about this product for the last few years. We thought that somehow COVID will wash it away. It's still here, and it's still here to stay. So we had 16,000 launch rooms in 2019, was the peak of the condo hotel market. We dropped it to 4,000, but this year already we expect 8,000 new launched condo hotel units. So the market will double compared to last year already. So we see that really coming back. Interestingly also, we are moving to much more branded units of condo hotel. So we see much more brand entering the condo hotel market, which is a good news because we tend to have a better product when the brand is there, not for all, but it tends to be a good news. 74% is the total inventory of those branded property belonging to 2 single operators. So there are 2 operators which by far will control the condo hotel market. Let's see, do we have any prize, Nyung, if somebody guessed my 2 operators? Who are the 2 operators that control the condo hotel? We all know it, but nobody wants to stand up into that because Wyndham and Best Western will by far take over this kind of product. And I think they're both in this room somewhere. Let's dig a bit more into the condo hotel. Why I put it as an elephant, as a problem? Well, condo hotel, sorry, my slide here is dead, but we'll look into this. Condo hotel somehow is a good or bad product? Well, it depends. Condo hotel can be an absolute disaster, as we know. Could be an environmental disaster. Could be a social disaster. Could be a really bad product. And also in terms of operation could be a disaster. And some of the condo hotels that we see now in the market are going to that direction. In terms of operation, it would be very difficult to make money out of those products. Some of them. This is not Vietnam. I don't want to get slapped on the stage, so I don't want to upset anybody, so don't worry. But condo hotel could also be an extremely nice product, well built, could be a very nice hotel or resort. When is very nice? When it's built as residential, second home, so they don't try to be an hotel, they're just a second home product, a good product for people to buy and stay. Or when they are built as a good resort. And a lot of good examples in Vietnam. So planners resort, the right market, the right room mix, the right facility, those 2 spectrum are actually good products. The problem in Vietnam is that in a lot of cases, developers, they want everything. They want to stay in between. And that's the kind of problem that we're having. So we need to get it just a little bit better planning. Myself, my team, we are working a lot into feasibility, into all these things with the architect to just get the right product in. The third elephant that we have in the Vietnam market that nobody really talk about, but is coming, is the shop house in a coastal destination. 10,000 units has been launched that are now under construction. 35% of them already open and they are operating somehow. 50% of them just in Phu Quoc. Now, why this is a problem? Shop house, it shouldn't be a problem because they're selling very well. Vietnamese, they love shop house and they buy and developers, they love it because they sell it easy, it's easy to plan. They love it. The problem is into the operation of those products, that they don't quite match the concept of second home, the operational wise, they're not as easy as to be converted into some of the Starbucks retail, if you like. So we see this as a problem. A lot of developers understand it, and they're helping their client to actually be able to produce an income out of that. So they will take them as a part of the hotel inventory or help them to find the right retail or create a walking street. A lot of developers are using, a lot of others, they are not. So the risk is that we'll see a lot of ghost projects around in the next few years. I'm done with bad news. I'm done with the elephant. Now let's move into, as I promised at the beginning, some opportunity. Now, I could pick up the single opportunity and tell you where to invest and how to invest, but I don't because I actually charge money for it. But here, what I'm doing, I will just look at the bigger picture to see if Vietnam can bring us opportunity. And the way I wanted to do this time, I wanted to see back what worked before to see if it can still work now. Now, before few things work, and maybe they will still make them working now, one of the things that worked before was to be a market pioneer. So somehow to open the market first. The destination did not exist until some people start to develop the first one, start to open for them. So in places like Da Nang, Furama, or Nam Hai, they were the first one. They created the destination Da Nang, or Meli and Ocham, which was the first branded resort back in Ocham. So somehow they create the destination. And why this is an opportunity? Because in Vietnam, you have a lot of destinations that want to be created. So somehow it's good if developer get together with the local authority, because you don't just do a good for you, you do a good for the destination. So this is one of the opportunities we see. Why? Because 50% of my inquire and all the architects here today, they are no longer Da Nang and Cam Ranh. They are all the other province. Every province wants to be the next Da Nang. So we do have a chance for some of the developers here to bring good products. The second things that I see as an opportunity is not to be a market pioneer, but to be a product pioneer. So to come with something that did not exist before, to bring an hotel or resort that is new, fresh, and just bring a new concept. All of them, and not only of them, we have a lot of examples in Vietnam, extremely successful product, because they were the first one of their kind. So being a product pioneer works. And this kind of leads me to the last part of the presentation, when I want to dig a bit more into the opportunity of hospitality, because what we keep telling developers is that hospitality is not just building a room, it's really working through the experience and bringing to your project. And that's probably the biggest opportunity that we have within hospitality and within Vietnam. Because consumers are changing a lot, and I use this slide a lot, but every year we update it. We new type of travelers that require much more personalized travelers. And this is the opportunity that we have to really develop the right product to stay out of the crowd of supply that we saw it before. And we're not the first one. There are a lot of type of hotel that can be brought here. I'll let you just read in some of them. A lot of them are really coming, and none of them, or very few, are actually in Vietnam. Now, I know a lot of them already. But what I come across a few months ago was, let me show you again, was the spiritual retreat. Not yet. Chen, you got the timing wrong. Not yet on the music, yes? Spiritual retreat. So I didn't know much about this spiritual retreat concept, spiritual wellness concept, but I was back in Italy 2 months, and this is unscripted, yeah? I was back in Italy 2 months ago. I was there after 2 years here in Vietnam, bit of a COVID time, blah, blah, blah. My mom told me, Mauro, you need to do some traveling, but you need to do it in the right way. So spiritual retreat somehow allow you to find back your soul. That's what my mom sent me to, say, you lost your God, I'm sending you to one of those spiritual retreats to find it back. That's a true story. They're called Eremo, and they're everywhere in Italy, just a spiritual wellness. And we do have some of them here in Vietnam back. Chang, now is your moment. And why it's good, why we can do it in Vietnam. Yes, we can. We have a young population, we have everything, and we have the right country to truly develop the hospitality. It's not finished yet. Don't start closing.
Que des semuses pour moi, ce côté nous se dira. Je ne sais de toi que les images de la mer. Un film de Coppola, des hélicoptères en colère. Un jour, j'irai là-bas. Un jour, dirai bonjour à ton âme. Un jour, j'irai là-bas, te dire bonjour, Vietnam. Un jour.
So this is actually one of my best experience in traveling, trying this. I don't know if you have tried yet the Song Dong Cave, you absolutely should, because it's outstanding. So this is leading me to the final part of the presentation, that we do have the economy for it, we do have the right people and the right vibe, we do have the right country to truly embrace hospitality and see the future. So it's just really up to us to start to develop the right products in Vietnam. There are a lot of them. It's really up to us to make it happen. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the presentation.
It was so So why don't we take a selfie now before having the panel discussion to show the world that Vietnam is ready for the rebound? Everybody just look at, maybe can I have the cameraman on the stage? And I think we have a slide on smiling.
I need. Thank you. Wait. So everybody, give me a good smile because we are going to be all over LinkedIn.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Was that music chosen for me by Mauro? Or Thank you. I would have preferred some AC/DC. But very good to see all of you. It is wonderful for us all to be here together again after a very challenging 12 months since our last event. And my name is James Young. I'm Vice President with WMC Group and in a previous life, General Manager of this very property. So it's very nice to be back here. I'd like to introduce my panel as we've started. She needs no introduction, of course. Fenady, please come up. Miss Tu from Nova Hospitality, where are you? There you are. Fenady, sit in front of your picture, please. It should be fairly obvious to people who we are, but I've been told I have to follow instructions. Miss Tu, very nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Kevin, again, someone who needs no introduction. Thank you. From Fusion Hotel Group. Great to have you here. Welcome back. Thank you. See if you can find your picture. Mr. Huang from Vin HMS. Very good to have you here. Good to see you. Thank you. Okay. Just find your picture and somewhere near there. A man who needs no introduction, Mr. John Gardner from Archipelago, Indochina. And last but not least, Mr. Varun Grover, Country Head Vietnam for Booking.com. So thank you very much all. Please take a seat. 2 long years ago, I read a report where Emirates Airlines were forecasting there would be no recovery from COVID until 2024. I thought that was incredibly pessimistic, but boy was I wrong. And only last week, the Economist Intelligence Unit released some research on the Asian travel market. And they were talking about no full recovery until 2024. And they specifically mentioned that Vietnam will potentially be slower to recover due to the lack of Chinese and Russian markets. And we've already touched on that a little bit, but it certainly points for us to ponder. And the way up is there for Vietnam. It's a question of how quick the way up will be. We have many challenges as well going forward, and we will touch on some of those points in this panel. So let's just do a very quick introduction. I've done it already, but maybe just to remind everyone who you are and what you do.
Hi, again, I'm Fenady from STR. So what I do is I handle Southeast Asia business development. So we looked into hospitality data. So I'm your go-to person in case you needed help for market insights.
Hi, my name is Tu. I'm representing Nova Hospitality, one of very new segment from Nova Group. I believe all the people here that know Nova Group for a very long time. And Nova Hospitality is very new and we are building our own brand right now. So I'm here to share with all of you some insight about Nova Group development as well, and also share some insight about the business that we have been managing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Kevin Beauvais, CEO with Fusion Hotel Group. Today we have 20 hotels in 2 countries. We have 3 brands with Fusion, Glow, and Hive soon to be launched. And I've been here now for about a year and super happy to be in Vietnam after 25 years in Thailand.
Hello, the name is Hoàng Nguyen. I'm the CEO and founder of VNHMS. I made a mistake a few years ago thinking building a PMS would be easy. And then so I paid the price and I have that running at 20,000 room in Vietnam now. But so I'm not really an operator or developer, but more like a software developer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Gardner, CEO of the newest hotel group on the block here in Vietnam. That's Archipelago Indochina. We've joined forces with Archipelago International, who have over 150 hotels in Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. So we're introducing the brands into Vietnam. Brands such as Aston, Huxley, Harper, Neo, Fave Hotels. So all of these brands, you'll see them in the future in Vietnam. So we're looking forward to an exciting future. Thank you.
Thank you, John. My name is Varun. I'm heading Booking.com in Vietnam. Our mission is to make it easier for everybody to experience the world, and that's exactly what I'm doing, making it easy for our customers to experience this beautiful country, working along with our partners, our vendor network, to make sure that customers have a very seamless, frictionless experience. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, everyone. We will go through some questions. I hope we might have some time for some questions from the audience as well. But let's start. Now, we touched a little bit on performance already, but let's talk about how things have been during the pandemic and what's happened. So maybe, Ms. Tu, maybe you'd like to give us your view to start.
Okay, thank you, James. As you know that we have at the moment a Nova Group, Nova Hospitality, we have 5 hotels in like drive-in area, more like in Vũng Tàu, Cần Thơ, Phan Thiết. And we see a very significant change when we have during the pandemic. So for example, like Azerai Cần Thơ or the project that we have in Anantara and Phan Thiết, the customer segmentation that we see is coming a lot from overseas. The domestic is around 40 to 50%. But during pandemic, we see the change in terms of segmentation, and we see that a lot of domestic, like we have the expat in Vietnam travel to Azerai and Anantara as more upscale resort. And also people change the habits, so they travel more weekend instead of the weekday. And that is what we saw during the pandemic. And also when the pandemic happened, the hotel like Ibis Style or Mercure in Vũng Tàu, we work together with some industrial, the company that got in industrial zone. And there's actually, we signed a contract with them, so there's some certain stability during the pandemic. And that's how we hold together, and we have the guests, mostly domestic guests, coming from Ho Chi Minh City to all the hotels and resort of Nova Hospitality.
Thank you. Kevin.
I think for us as a group, I think when we look inward, we would say we didn't do a very good job previously with the domestic market. We went after the international customer. We thought they paid us better. We thought they stayed longer. I mean, we didn't do a really good job with the domestic market. But clearly there's a great domestic market, and it is growing leaps and bounds. And I think what we've all seen over the last 5 years, it's a different market. And I think we've all got a real responsibility to look at the domestic market and make sure we don't lose them. And that's going to mean some flexibility on pricing and some resident rates and some different things that I think we've got to do. It's a great market, and we really have to go after that.
Yeah, I think it's very good, 2 good points there. First of all, many people talk about Vietnam's emerging middle class, but in hospitality, I think we've been very slow to capture that. And the pandemic has actually given us an opportunity to do so. Varun, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to see how domestic segment has been growing, and we've also been observing that in our trends. What's very interesting to see is that if you look at 2019 and going by a report which McKinsey published last year, overall Vietnamese travelers spent about 16 billion USD on the overall travel, right? And 5.2 billion USD was actually spent outside Vietnam. Now with COVID, these are the customers, these are travelers who are stuck in their own home country, right? And where do they travel? Where do they spend this money on entertainment, on experiencing outside world? And all that money has pumped back into the market. And this is where we see that the potential in domestic will continue to be there. And we are very optimistic about leveraging on this segment. So for sure, even for us, based on insights we have, domestic will continue to be very important for us.
Thank you. I think the challenge is, of course, once international markets open, how are we going to keep those people in Vietnam? Yep. Any comments on that? Any ideas?
Actually, we thought about that as well. You know that Azera is very unique product that belongs to Nova Hospitality. And before pandemic, Azera mostly focused on the international guest. So I think after, actually we at the point that everything start to go back to normal. Of course, it will take around 5 months to like 1 year in order to get more international guests coming to Vietnam. But the thing is that all the hotel here, I believe they have the strategy to start target into those international market in order to bring the balance between domestic market, also international market as well. And moving forward, because there are some certain seasonality. So for domestic market, people care a lot about what I see is that for the drive-in area, like Vũng Tàu or Phan Thiết, later, like end of this year, we have like highway open, right? So the time that people can travel from Ho Chi Minh City to Phan Thiết is shortened. And if there's a good promotion, the pricing package for the weekend, then I believe the capture for domestic market is still there. And like what Mauro to present, right? Whether it's Bali or Sapa or It Ha Long or, you know, compared to other area, Vietnam has a lot of potential. And the domestic market, even before pandemic, is still like 50-60%. I believe that even when we have the guests travel international, we still be able to maintain that and keep the balance between domestic and international.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. John.
Yes, I think what's happened over the pandemic, and particularly in the last few months, since we've been able to travel, it's changed the mindset of local people in Vietnam, or people that live here, whether it's locals or expats. You know, people are finding out and exploring new parts of Vietnam they didn't know existed. People that might have traveled overseas before, they're now thinking, wow, we don't need to travel into overseas. You know, Vietnam has got so many destinations, and there's so much good product around the country now, whether it be on the coast or mountain retreats, whatever. There's so much more on the drawing board. So I think domestic travel is here to stay. I mean, in volume.
Thank you. Maybe, sorry. Can I just morph into the next question then? And because, yeah. Sorry, I would never interrupt a lady. Do you want to add a point? Or?
Well, I mean, we're talking about source market, obviously, the locals and the internationals, and how we're going to keep the international market. I mean, you have a lot of offerings, obviously, and for me, looking at the data of the different markets, you definitely, even it was during the time of pandemic, there's still that opportunities of rates going up, or the weekends and the weekdays. So there are so many areas for analysis. So looking at segmentation, your groups, and you know, I know there has been some inquiries now on groups as markets are opening. So obviously, like I said earlier, you know, it's a race now. So it's just a matter of time when you open up, and you have the infrastructure, you have the offerings. So there's obviously a lot of potential.
Okay, thank you. I think, yes, let's morph into the next question. How is the recovery going to take shape, and which part of the business is going to do best? Is it going to be city hotels, or is it going to be resorts? And let's have a look. Varun, what's your thought?
Sure. I mean, you know, we all know that the world is very uncertain right now, and I think we will continue to live with COVID. It's amazing to see that more and more countries are considering COVID as an endemic. So for sure, you know, with this uncertainty, I think people are very conscious of where they travel. What the important question here is, what do customers really look for, right? And I think there will be tailwind of recovery with the domestic, and as tourism becomes more open, there will be increase in inbound. Honestly, we are already looking at some green shoots. So I think recovery might take a couple of years from now, if you ask me, based on how I see it. But I would say domestic will continue to drive performance for hotels in Vietnam. Now, coming to your second part of the question, right, between hotel resorts, I think I'll come back to the same point. What do customers really want? So I think firstly, it's the health and safety. Customers today are very particular about health and hygiene at the accommodations they travel to. And at Booking.com, we've actually come up with a very innovative filter on front end where customers can choose which are these properties with increased health and safety measures. They're also looking for flexibility. So, properties, whether it's city, hotel, outside city, whoever has more flexible policies for customer to make changes last minute will grow. And I think even before pandemic, people are looking for more authentic experiences, right? So while hotels and resorts will continue to be a business driver, even for booking, I think it's one of our biggest category. We also offer 19 alternate accommodation segments, right? Whether it's villas, camps, beautiful homestays, with a lot of character. So I think all these things will continue to shape how customers travel in future and recovery.
Yeah. Thank you. Fenady, any data you'd like to share with us?
Well, obviously, we've seen that resort generally has got a better performance as compared to city hotels. But, as the fears really has reside, and we really have seen that city hotels are also already picking up as compared to previous months. So that's really a great indication. And of course, we also have to think about the gateway cities, like, Ho Chi Minh as itself. Before you go to another destination, once we get to attract international tourists, they need to go to Ho Chi Minh. And, it's a great gateway to be able to experience what the country has to offer.
Yeah. Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I think we've got to really sort of throw away everything we thought we knew when it came to seasonality and times of the year. And, what we're seeing right now, since this latest reopening from Hanoi, business coming into Saigon that we've never seen before. And that's amazing. Tu and I were just talking about the need for people to get together for some small meetings, some small MICE business that's domestic, but people want to get together just like we all do today. People want to get together, and there's a lot of opportunity for small groups, and whether it's an ex-com or department heads of a group or a company, there's a ton of opportunity there. So I think we've got to really just look at it completely differently than we ever have before.
Yeah, yeah. I'd just like to pick up, if I may, perhaps with you and John, Varun's point on flexibility. So as operators, and I've seen this with airlines, book direct with an airline and you get flexibility. Yeah. If you go through an agent, there is no flexibility. How do you feel about that? It's an interesting one, always this argument between OTA and booking direct. Any comments? I don't want to start a war.
What should I say, Varun? Look, I think whether it's hotels or whether it's any other sort of business, I think the world is moving towards a more flexible environment, and hotels are certainly no exception. And I think the more flexibility, the more personalised we can provide, make guest experience in our hotels, the better support and loyalty we will get in our hotels. And being flexible to the market and the demand, there is no choice. That's the way of the world from now on, for sure.
And I think, taking Kevin's point as well, there has to be a lot more flexibility when it comes to groups, not just individual bookings as well, which is something as an industry we've been very reluctant to do in the past. But I've seen that, I think we all have as operators recently. So talking health and hygiene, and it is an interesting thing how technology has changed over COVID. A wise old general manager told me once, many years ago, that when it came to technology, you needed to be at the leading edge, not the bleeding edge. And I think Mr. Huang's comment earlier on reflects that. But Mr. Huang, tell me, how has COVID changed hospitality technology?
Well, I know Mauro said we don't want to mention COVID again, but I believe to understand how COVID changed hospitality tech, you need to look what happened, right? So there's a few things that I saw during COVID, and no offense to all the operators here. And the first thing would be the adaptation to change. I mean, for hotel, it's very slow. I mean, it is very hard. And then so, you know, operator and hotel at the receiving end of whole kind of policy and law and regulation change, right? You always receive it in the last minute. But then we have a problem when we communicate that with the guests. So the communication with the guests is just one example. Is like hotel didn't do a really good job during COVID, because I've seen many cases where the guests actually ask the hotel, like, what is your policy? What do I have to do? Any quarantine? You know, what's happened when I come to Ho Chi Minh City? And most of the time it's, you know, people don't know. Or even if you know, there's no way for you to communicate properly with all your guests, you know, before they arrive or when they do the booking and things like that. So this is just an example of how the current technology doesn't allow you the ability to change quickly, right? And then after COVID, like Varun said, you know, the market looks back, but the expectation have changed, right? So I've read the report from Booking too, and also from Expedia, and you know, right now the consideration is not just the location, the quality of the food, but hygiene policy, flexible cancellation policy, and they expect full refund, right? Because I think most of us have a case where we want to go to the trip, and then one of us that's positive for COVID, right? And then it's just like, yeah, I want full refund. So it's easy for the guests to want that, it's reasonable, but how do we as a operator, you know, make sure that the moment you receive, let's say 10 rooms back 24 hours before they arrive, how can you push it out there in a very quick and efficient way, okay? So, and then also again, the communication on, you know, the count and the cleaning and the mask mandate or not and things like that. So with all that said, I wouldn't go for detail on the technology. It will probably take me like a few days. But all in all, I think after COVID, right, what we see here is whatever system that grow or adapt after COVID will be something allow you the ability to change really quickly and also to communicate with other systems quickly, because we don't have a luxury to have like one single platform from day one, right? You all build with the core, and then you add in as many systems as you grow. So at the minimum, you must make sure that all these systems communicate with each other properly. So the moment a housekeeper follow your deep cleaning procedure, clean the room, then the front office know, the guest on the guest app also get a notification. Because we all understand that they don't, I mean, as a guest, I don't really care about how you clean my room, but I need to know. That makes me feel a lot safer that way, okay? So the way we build our system and the way we talk to operator, there's three things on the technology that we want to mention. First, it should be something that open. So that something can connect to you. So the moment as Google decide, hey, I want to post your hotel room into Google Hotel, Google search, can I do it? So you should be able to do it quickly. The second thing would be extendable. So you can reach out to other systems and collect the data. You guys all know vaccine passport in Vietnam is almost ready, right? But let's say if the government decide the moment the guests walk into your hotel, you need to validate that vaccine passport status with the Ministry of Health. How are you going to do it, right? And then so that's the second. And the third thing is it should be human-centric, because people talk about the human shortage, right? So how are you going to operate the same hotel with less people and actually make more money on that? So I think that's a three key important thing on technology that, you know, changed after COVID, and, you know, that's how we want it to be.
Thank you. Kevin, do you want to jump in there? I heard that thing, last one particularly, about reducing staff and using technology in the right way.
Yeah, back in 1984, we put ATM machines into a 1,200-room hotel in downtown Chicago, and everybody just laughed at us, and they said, what the hell are you doing? But I think we've all come a long way, and we've all checked in on AirAsia counter, and I think the world has clearly changed, and I think we've got to be able to take iPads and make the user experience. We've got to stop designing big front desk and having all these spaces. It's got to be more personalized. We've got to deal with people. Everybody's used to dealing with these small devices these days. That's what we've got to do. And it's right there. It's available. There's a lot of great people out there that can make that happen for us.
And I think it is absolutely a very important design point, that whole arrival experience. If you have the most beautiful driveway and entrance, and then you come up against a barrier, it's quite depressing in a way in 2022. That's the way you lose that human touch. So, anything, Ms. Tu, from...
I would like to share something as well, because I think like what the gentleman shared, that the guests now, they fear getting in contact with a lot of people. So we also from Nova Hospitality, we're working with, we have like Nova Technology. So we're working on the option of like one touch, like pre-check-in one touch or no touch. When the guests actually come to the hotel, they can use a phone to actually go to the room. So I think those are the things that would considering in the future when there's a pandemic happen and then people are afraid that get in contact too close to the for example, like receptionist or to the other guest.
Yeah.
I just want to add one small point.
No, it's a good point. I'm very excited that we have actually at least 2 international travelers on stage here. Fenady, tell me, as an international traveler, how have your expectations as a guest changed when it comes to technology?
Well, definitely, we need to strike a good balance. For me, I'm looking for, convenience. And obviously, for me, I want to feel safe as a traveler. I mean, like I said earlier, this is my first time to travel again. So when we were talking last week, we're doing like a panel exercise. I would say like, I haven't really traveled that much so I'm one of those in the statistics who are afraid to travel, but coming here, it's so easy. It's, the confidence is there. So, and for technology, obviously, is, very easy to connect with the front office. But from a guest perspective, don't lose that human touch. I mean, that experience, because we can get lost in too much technology and then you lose that experience that even Mauro has said, it's more of what you offer in terms of experience. So finding the right balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to ask another question, but in a few minutes I will open to the floor if anyone has a burning question relevant to this panel, okay? Nothing to do with the New Zealand rugby team or Indian cricket or the lack of English sporting success, whatever. But please, anything relevant to this panel, so have a think. But let's, as we're on international matters, Mauro talked about the flood of international brands coming to Vietnam, and 261 branded properties in the coming or will be in the next 3 years. John, Kevin, Miss Tu, yeah. Tell me, what do international brands see in Vietnam? Why should they come to Vietnam? Why are they signing up? Who would like to start? Oh, John, go on. Sorry, I made a cheap jibe about the All Blacks, so off you go.
There's a problem with that? I think most developers and hotel developers, they see the opportunity in Vietnam as Thailand was probably 25 years ago or so. And we look at where Thailand is today, well, pre-pandemic, of course. But there's a lot of locations within this country that have a great potential for resorts, whether they be coastline or mountain, and to much of the world, it's a relatively new destination. Thailand's been open, and so Thailand has been very well developed for 30, 40, 50 years or more, and Vietnam, as I say, is relatively new, and it needs a lot of international visitors and domestic visitors to explore parts of Vietnam that are just raw beaches or raw mountainsides and opportunities to explore the country. It's such a beautiful, beautiful country, and many, many places. So that's hence the reason why Archipelago Indochina is here with its 10 brands and going to be part of the number of brands coming into the country in the future.
10 brands. Congratulations. Can you name them all?
Yes, let me talk about that later.
No, don't worry. But congratulations. Kevin.
Yeah, I think there's clearly an opportunity when you look around the region, you look at the growth of what's happened, and you look at the growth spurt of where Thailand and other countries have come. There's room for opportunity for more brands. There's just got to be clear definition of who you are as a brand. We're all talking about guest experience, but we've got to get serious about that. You know, big box hotel is great, but you've got to be able to provide the experience. And I think the new brands that come in and the new brands that are being introduced as we see throughout, you know, both in Vietnam and throughout the region, there's tremendous opportunity as long as you find that niche and as long as you truly focus on that guest experience.
Yeah, and sorry to, Ms. Tu, I would like you to put your point about the importance of Vietnamese hospitality against international brands. But just, again, I think taking Kevin's point, the sense of place for all designers, yeah, when you're in Vietnam, you want to know that you are in Vietnam, not just in another hotel room. Yeah. So, Ms. Tu, international brands, what do you think?
I think it's very positive for us from the owning company point of view. Because at the moment we have 5 hotels, but moving forward in the next 5 years, Nova Hospitality will have around 100 hotels developed in the pipelines. And because our goal, I believe from all the owners as well, is to deliver international experience to all the guests that come and use the service of Nova Hospitality. And based on my experience working with all the international operators, we see that they very careful when it comes to invest or when it comes to their agreement to put the brand on one properties. So the flood of international, numbers of international hotel operators coming to Vietnam proves that the infrastructure investment, there's the accessibility to different areas in Vietnam. There's a proper investment from the owning company. There's a potential for all the operators to see the business growing in different areas. So I think, and also we can see that the international hotel operator brand is not only in the big city and developing city, but also in like Phan Thiết, Đà Lạt, Cam Ranh, those areas that still have a lot of rooms for development. So I believe from Nova Hospitality as an owning company, besides choosing the operator, we want to work in partnership together with the operator to build a destination as well in coordination with the local authority and also the central government. So I think the fact that we see a lot of international operators, especially more luxury positioning, proves that Vietnam has a lot of potential and there's a lot of faith in tourism in Vietnam moving forward.
Yep, thank you. Varun, from your side, do you see international brands as critical for Vietnam's future?
I mean, absolutely. I think international brands bring a lot of awareness about the country to international tourists, so it definitely is important for a country. And I remember, you know, when Mauro was talking about how different experiences is what people are looking for, I think this is something which is very important. I truly believe in experiential travel, and I think that's the future. So whether it's a local brand or international brands, I think they have to be very mindful of what kind of developments they are looking for within Vietnam, because there's so much potential. Like, you know, a long weekend is coming now, and everybody I talk to, almost 99% people, are going to either Phu Quoc or I hear Đà Lạt. And that's about it. Then, you know, Vung Tau maybe. But Vietnam is such a big country with so many beautiful experiences. Where are these destinations? Why aren't people going there? Where is the awareness? So I think there's so much more which can be achieved. And yeah, I'm very optimistic about future of Vietnam and what international developers can do in the country.
Yeah. And it is interesting, I know from experience that international brands used to say, we focus on primary cities first. Has that changed? Are brands now more likely to go to secondary destinations?
Maybe I can answer that. We have done some studies when it comes to brands versus independents, and this is very close to your heart, obviously. We have a lot of brands, new brands coming. So over the years, from maybe 10 years ago, we really have seen independents taking about, in Southeast Asia generally, about 70% and 30% on the brands. But after maybe about 3 years ago, we really have seen that brands growing. Now the share is about 55% on the independents. Of course, there's still a lot of independent hotels, right? But the brands, the awareness for the brands, their expertise, we really have seen that shift, that many owners have already moved towards more into the branded properties. And of course, maybe from the business sense is also to bring more attraction to the destination, more buzz into the asset, and then obviously from an assets perspective, that also increases, the gravity, or as you would say, the business in terms of for the independent property. So we've seen that shift generally in terms of, and of course the pipeline. We've seen a lot of the pipeline and a lot of brands in Southeast Asia. And if we probably would look at it from the learnings from Thailand, it's generally a lot of shifts that has happened in Thailand, and we can see that Vietnam is also following that suit in that front.
I think I would just point out, there's a couple new locations that are coming that, 5 years ago, I didn't even know where they were. When people talked about Quy Nhon and people talked about Quang Binh, and Quang Binh's, Mauro had a nice slide and had a great experience there last year. But these are the kind of places that people want to come and see. These are the unique experiences. And, Quang Binh is, truly in the middle of nowhere, but, the airport's going to get upgraded. It'll be an international airport. There's caves, there's beaches, there's a challenging weather in the wintertime, but it's okay. That'll get overcome because there's something to do. It's not going there just for the beach, but you're going there for the caves. And I think that's what the opportunities, as many people have said here today, there's just so many opportunities that can really, truly be, grown.
Huang, from a technology point of view, independents against brands, are you seeing independents more willing to invest in suitable technology after the pandemic?
Well, Kevin just tipped me and he said nobody. And that's partly true. After the pandemic, if you survive, it's already an achievement, right?
Here.
So, to be honest, seriously, they all understand that they have to invest, but I think the question is how, right? And then so there's a whole bunch of new technology that allow you to do transformation, but in a cheaper way, rather than to spend a whole bunch of capex, install, server and buy software and hire people. Now you can basically go out and hire the software. So moving from capex to opex, I think it's a movement that happened not just for independent, but also for chain. Now independent will have more flexibility, right? They can change from the very bottom, and then also have more flexibility on picking the service, right? Chain, you need to have, let's say, you need to have approval from Spain, from US, and it takes time. But independent, they have more freedom. So we'll see. I think it's good for the market, right? But all in all, because Fenady mentioned on the human touch, and I totally agree with that. So from my point of view, right, technology is just a tool. So all in all, what we need is we need to be able to help operator run a hotel better, to provide better experience. So before, let's say, only experienced front office can remember everybody's name, right, and understand everything. But the idea of technology, we somehow can just have all that information in front of them. So even a junior, when the moment you walk in, say, Mr. Young, welcome back to Intercontinental, things like that. So they know something like that, and actually add a lot more value into the experience. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you. So one quick question from the floor. Anyone want to say anything? Yes, sir. I know that man. It's just behind you.
Okay, my name is Herbert. I'm the managing director of Alma Resort in Camaran, the place where you have 600% increase in the next years. Huang just said something very interesting about technology, and I want to ask John a question. This is related to what I read in LinkedIn, when you launched Archipelago. I read something about powered by Archipelago. Has this something to do with what Huang said, technology for white labels? Is this something? Because I'm curious, because I may may consider such a setup because we are a white label hotel. Thank you, John. I hope it's not too specific because CEOs normally they don't know exactly what's going on with a detailed question, okay?
John, I want 10% of any deal.
Thank you, Herbert. My good friend Herbert. So Archipelago have another string to their bow, which is called Powered by Aston. Aston is actually the flagship brand, and it's where we focus on independent hotels and look after their distribution, their channel management, revenue management, booking engines, and any hotel, independent hotel can plug into our system and get immediate savings on in all sorts of ways to benefit their hotel. We have case studies in other countries whereby we've increased their online business by 200 to 300% just with the investment in the systems, IT systems that we have in Archipelago. So it's good technology is out there with us. And 10%, what do you say, 10%?
Tin. I think it is a very interesting point on white label, and that's something we've seen grow more and more during the pandemic. The number of inquiries about white label services, and international brands are far more willing to consider that at all levels of the hotel business. So that certainly, is that going to continue, or they're going to go back to being more rigid? And that's something, perhaps a question we can answer in 12 months' time. One important point in Vietnam and around the globe is sustainability. And this is a subject that we cannot ignore. And I think we have to ask the question, how are we tackling sustainability? Because forgetting the last 2 years of COVID, sustainability is going to be a bigger issue going forward. So, Varun, what are you seeing in terms of changes in buyer behavior, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is a very interesting topic and something I'm personally very passionate about because growing up in an emerging country like India, I feel I was very fortunate enough to see how tourism can be a force for good. So I've traveled enough within India and within, Southeast Asia, and I truly feel that COVID has given that realization to people that they can actually make a difference while they travel. So this is something, at booking.com we take very seriously. In fact, sustainability is a core pillar of our mission. We want to make sure that while we are rebuilding this industry, we help travelers to experience the world in a more mindful, more sustainable way. But what is sustainability? It's a buzzword which a lot of people still don't understand because different people have a different, idea of what sustainability in travel is all about. So I think at Booking, we've tried to make it a bit more simpler because customers are looking for sustainable accommodation options. In fact, every year we come up with a research report. It's called Sustainable Travel Report, which looks into 30 different countries, about 30,000, people. And we survey what travelers are actually looking for. Now, you'll be surprised to see that in Vietnam, almost 96% of travelers say that they want to travel sustainably. And almost 74% of travelers have actually searched for a sustainable accommodation last 1 year. So I think clearly, the data points suggest that it's something we must be more mindful of and we should take it seriously. But accommodations are still not, at least, a lot of partners whom we work with are still not clear how they can highlight their sustainable practices to our customers. So we've kind of made it a bit simpler for them because, being such a big player in travel industry, we feel it's our responsibility to support the industry in becoming more sustainable. And today it's very simple for our accommodation partners to go on booking.com extranet and give us information on 29 practices. These are practices like, whether you use renewable energy or not. Do you have single-use plastic usage or not? So, simple things. And partners can tell us whether they are applying these practices or not. And it becomes very easy for customers to then see which are these properties which are more sustainable. In fact, we've also launched a travel sustainable badge recently. Today we have more than 100,000 properties with this batch on the front end on booking.com, and clearly the trend says that this is something which will grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other comment?
I think on sustainability, there's a couple different things to measure. I think, first of all, last year in our broader group with Peter Meyer from Logis, we looked at our ESG practice for all of our different companies. And I think what's important is it's great to talk about free-range chickens and no plastic straws and all these different things that we can do. But what's really more important is how do we really track and measure that? With our new Hive brand, we've gone with EDGE certification as our first brand new hotel that we've designed. And the idea is that, you don't know what you don't know until you really start tracking and measuring it. So I think the first step is really making sure that you can buy into a program, whether it's EDGE or LEEDS or anybody else. There's lots of great programs out there, but having something that you can really measure. The second thing, during lockdown, we found a tremendous opportunity. We've all had gardens, and we grow a little basil here and there, and maybe we have a few chickens. But in Cameron, we really got serious. Today, we've got over 2,000 square meters of garden that generates about 80 kilos of vegetables a day. We're generating about 900 eggs a month from the 200 animals that we have. Chickens and whatnot. And that's done a couple things. Number one, it's reduced food cost. Number two, it's given the staff something to do during COVID that really brought people together to do something different. But more importantly, it's gone back to what I mentioned earlier, it's that guest experience. The experience that people are having now to go get their eggs and see the goats and do whatever else is going on at the farm is really a cool thing, and that's what sustainability is all about. And I think to teach kids, we've got Saturday morning programs where, I thought we'd get 5 or 10 kids. We've got 30, 40 kids sometimes on a Saturday coming to a sustainability class to learn about, water treatment and farming and different levels of sustainability. So there's lots of great ways we can help teach and help our guests learn.
Yeah, and just to back that up, Kevin, two very good points. There's a study from Cornell University, which I have here. First of all, talking about the importance of metrics and measurement, and that's one of the big challenges we have as an industry, is measuring how efficient we are. And I think we eventually will go down the HACCP road and having an external auditor of some thought that is the dominant industry player for it. Second thing, and we'll move on to this, is how much sustainability initiatives impact employee engagement, and taking your point of how your colleagues got involved in all of that. But it is something our teams talk about. We may not know it, but they certainly do. And if you're not doing it, then it is something that your competitors are certainly doing. So taking that on, because I can see a worried group over there, I'm just going to ask you very quickly, each of you, elephant in the room, 1 point. What are the problems for Vietnam? And then we're going to end on a high note. But Varun, do you want to start? What's a problem for Vietnam? Quick soundbite.
I think it has to do with sustainable development.
Yep, okay. John?
I think what was mentioned earlier on by Mauro, I think a potential oversupply and a very huge shortage of human resources.
Yep. Yeah. Fine.
I think we move fast, but that will be a downside to that. So how do you move fast and make sure you keep all the experience and all the sustainability? It's important.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
Cheap rates.
Cheap rates.
We've got great products. We don't have to give it away. We've got to be competitive, but we don't have to kill each other. Let's be smart about this.
Yeah.
Business is going to come back. So let's not just cut rates to the bottom and try to get to volume, but we got to be sensible.
After the coffee break, Fenady is going to present average rate decline in Ho Chi Minh City. But no. Thank you. Good point. Thank you. Ms. Tu.
I got the same point as John. It's managing human resource. And I believe that at the moment, a lot of people fighting, like especially in Phu Quoc or some certain area that you have a lot of hotel, people fighting over the staff, the employees, and that is not sustainable. And that's why we have Nova Education as well to build those things. But I think that's one of the biggest things that we have our worry on.
Yep. Thank you. Fenady.
And for me would be supply changes. Vietnam has got one of the highest in Asia Pacific in terms of pipeline. So obviously when these new builds are coming into the market, more challenges. So we can be optimistic with the numbers, but we have to be very cautious. So it's really striking that balance when these new builds are in. But there will be probably some delays, but we need to factor that in as we go and look into recovery.
Great. So thank you. But we're going to end on a high note. So let's take a good vibe, a good vibration. What's going to make Vietnamese hospitality stand out in the long term? Varun, I'm going to start with you again.
Technology. I think I'm certain that accommodations today understand, our partners know that evolving technology is going to change how they plan and forecast their business. And I think that will definitely be a deciding factor, for sure.
Great. Thank you.
I think a lot of new destinations that will come online within Vietnam will be a big appeal to people that do know Vietnam already, and also the lovely nature and personality of Vietnamese people serving in our what will be beautiful hotels and resorts.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
Resilient. I believe we got back to the 2019 way before 2024, so we'll see.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. Kevin.
Definitely our people here. You know, having worked throughout the region, people are focused, people are very black and white, people are driven, but there's a great sense of hospitality and there's a great sense of English for the international customer. We've got all the right stuff, and I think when we look at where everybody else was at, where we are at today, we're a lot further ahead. And I think we're going to get there a lot faster.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Ms. Tu.
I think it's stability. It's about the safety that the government been giving to all the international traveler coming to Vietnam. That people feel safe, travel here, there's no war, people living at peace, people adapt very fast with the change due to the pandemic, saying that the safety feeling when people actually come to Vietnam in the future.
Yep, absolutely. And we must not forget that, sorry, that the reputation that Vietnam has overseas for that. Yeah.
And for me would be heritage, the love for heritage for Vietnam. I think that's really coincides with the experience that people are looking for. So when the floodgates are open, people are going to be looking for the old and the new, and Vietnam is really the great place for blending that heritage.
Great, thank you.
James, we have a question, online question, just a few minutes ago from Mr. Long. So we have another 1 minute, just to have a...
1 minute?
Yeah, quick answer on this one. So to the panel, today we talk a lot about the international brands coming to Vietnam. How about the domestic brands? And how do they do to, perform amongst the international brand? What changed for them?
It's a good question. We did cover that to a certain extent, but Ms. Tu, do you want to, or Kevin, you want to have a word? You've got about 30 seconds each.
Yeah, I would just say domestic brands, I've been on both sides of the fence. Domestic brands are more agile, they're more flexible, and that's the key. We don't have 1,000 hotels that we've got to be consistent with. And that's not good or bad, it's just where we're at in this stage in development.
I think international brand is more, because there's a fee, there's a requirement that the owner had to follow. So probably the domestic brand, they give more flexibility, like Kevin said, in terms of requirement on the brand standard, the technical requirement, etc. And they understand Vietnamese, how Vietnamese work, how Vietnamese think. So that, I think, one of the advantage for domestic brand over international brand as well.
And I do think the last 2 years have seen the growth of domestic brands. I don't want to say that international brands abandon Vietnam in its hour of need, but I will put that thought out there that Vietnam had to survive by itself. And many hoteliers really had to adapt very quickly without the support of international offices and so on. So the future is bright for domestic brands, definitely.
Thank you. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we will have many more interesting sections later on the residential and design part. So now I think we have 10 minutes for break, and then we'll be back very soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the panelists.
Thank you to the panel.
James.
Thank you.
and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mid-Export Conference 2022. Mr. Paul, next to me, he can't wait to deliver a presentation on hybrid structure, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
So
you
we're
flew
going to
from
talk
Thailand?
about the branded residences and the hybrid structure. So everybody outside drinking coffee, come on in.
Yes, Paul fly on the way from Thailand,
Yeah,
Correct.
I flew in this morning from Thailand.
and he
It's
can't wait for
great
this
to be
moment.
back here.
Yep. So Paul, the stage is yours. I will let you introduce yourself and your presentation as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all have had your coffee. You're now wide awake. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about the law. So, please don't fall asleep. Mauro already told me I am not allowed to put the audience to sleep or I'm not invited back. So, what I'm going to talk about today is branded residences and the hybrid structure. And this is branded residences specifically for Vietnam, but also more generally talking about some of the issues that can come up for developers and for brands. So a little introduction about myself. I'm the deputy head, or co-head rather, of the regional real estate practice for DFDL. We're a regional law firm based around Southeast Asia, as well as in South Asia. We focus on the developing markets in the region. Here is our map. You can see our presence throughout the region. And we'll get right into it. So this is a lovely picture of me when I was much younger and thinner. So let's get right into this discussion. What I'm going to talk about today, because I have very limited time, I will not go into a huge deep dive regarding this. There are lots and lots of issues that would need to be discussed. And what I'm going to do is just try to give you a general overview of some of these issues. As some of you in the audience know, I can talk about this for hours, but I promised Mauro I wouldn't put you to sleep. So why don't we start out generally? What are we referring to when we're talking about a branded residence? So a branded residence is a property which is then branded, of course, using intellectual property rights typically associated with a hospitality group. So that could be a condo development, it could be an apartment development, it could even be a villa project. The idea is that that brand comes in and creates this trust in the market that this brand is capable of operating this facility, generates benefits for both the hotel brand as well as for the project developer. So now to the meat of it. What is the hybrid structure? So the hybrid structure in Vietnam is a little bit tricky. It's this idea of using a residential property, which is then also put to a hospitality use. So when I say residential property, I should be very careful, because residential property in Vietnam is a bit tricky. You have different properties which are classified for use as a place to stay, but it may not necessarily qualify as residential property for purposes of where you would live. It could fall into two different categories. So when we're looking at this hybrid structure, we're looking at putting in this branded residence. You now have your project, and then you're going to be operating it either as a serviced apartment, as a hotel or hospitality project, or some kind of hybrid in between. And I think what we saw earlier in Mauro's speech was this beautiful picture of a man with a long beard as a mermaid on the beach. And that's the difficult process of trying to understand this hybrid structure and really trying to figure out how it works. Now, I realize this is a lot of text. So I'm going to apologize for that. I wish I had more fun photos. But what I'm going to just do is just go over this very high level. We have what we call in the hybrid structure a management option. So what that means is that a hospitality group and a project developer enter into a set of contracts where the project manager, or the project developer rather, operates the hospitality property, so the branded residence, as a hospitality property using a management contract. So rather than a secured legal right for the owner of the project or the individual unit owner to transfer their use rights over to the project owner, this is just strictly a service contract relationship. So this is one of those hybrid structures. Now, that works well for the hospitality owner as well as for the project developer. The reason being is that you create the structure that both parties can live with that allow you to both brand the property and feel comfortable with what you're getting back in return. Now, in Vietnam, it's also very common to have this second option, which is a sale and leaseback structure. The sale and leaseback structure is essentially where a project developer develops a property, sells units either on a leasehold basis or long-term and stable basis, depending on who the buyers are and depending on what the land use rights are. And then the owners who purchase that property then lease it back to the project developer or to the hospitality operator. Now, this is a very common structure here in Vietnam. It also becomes a little bit tricky because you have to understand what are the rights that you're getting. So when we look at these two different structures, we have to look at relative security. So from a legal perspective, when we're either representing a developer or an operator, we want to understand what are the risks that are involved for both parties so that we can then figure out how to secure those rights. So I have a very short list of risks. I could talk about risks the entire afternoon, but we're not going to do that. So, number one, not all land use rights in Vietnam can be used for this structure clearly. Now, what do I mean by that is that there are issues in the law which make it somewhat uncertain. And so we have to try to navigate some of these risks. So when you're looking at your land use rights, if you're a project developer and you have residential land use rights, you probably don't want to convert those rights to a commercial usage. You want to retain your residential use rights. The reason being is because your residential use rights are typically on a long-term and stable basis, which means you have more security over the project on a long term, versus commercial land use rights, which could be tied to the project length, 50 years, or in special circumstances, 70 years, depending on where it is and how much capital you're investing in the project. Another issue under Vietnamese law is that you have to think about who you're selling to. So if you're familiar with other markets, for instance, like Thailand, if you're doing this kind of hybrid structure in Thailand, you have a condo model which essentially allows for foreign buyers to acquire up to 49% of the total floor area. And in Vietnam, you have to think about this same kind of restrictions. You have your restrictions on the number of condo units that you can sell to foreigners, as well as registration requirements. The good thing is if you're looking at a residential project, is a little bit more clear than Thailand. That being the case that, for instance, foreign buyers are permitted to buy villa units, but it's of course subject to the leasehold structures in Vietnam. You also have to look at what are the project developers' business lines. So just because a project developer wants to do a project does not necessarily mean that they have the right to under their recorded business lines in their ERC or IRC. And finally, when you're looking at foreign buyers, and just coming back to this point, you also have to start thinking about whether or not those foreign buyers are eligible to purchase the property, and whether or not the buyer, even if they're eligible, is actually permitted to rent out the unit. So for instance, a foreign organization is not permitted to enter their unit into a rental pool program. So if you have a foreign buyer, you're looking at foreign individuals, or a Vietnamese entity which is set up by a foreign company which has permission to engage in the rental business, actually entering into that contract. So these are some of the issues. The other part of that is just registering the project. So in recent developments, you've seen changes in the law which require, or rather, I should say, create a little bit more clarity as to how you get your use rights to your buyers. So registering the project is actually a very useful change in the law, because what it does is that it then creates a definite process to allow for a project to grant the land use rights for those foreign buyers. Now, there's still, of course, uncertainty in practice. There will be things that will have to change, but generally speaking, I think that that's been a good development. Now, I also want to bring up this distinction between a villa project and a condo project or an apartment project. One of the big differences is that in order to secure this hybrid structure, you have to think about what are the legal requirements in order to implement it. So for a condominium project, you are looking at, in Vietnam, having a management committee that has to be appointed by the owners of those units on establishment. And you have to think about how is the project developer going to secure the appointment of the operator in order to maintain their obligations under the contract, whether that's sale and lease back or whether that's a management structure. Either way, you've got to think about how you're going to secure those rights. It's not necessarily clear unless you've prepared, for instance, your management documents, your rules and regulations in such a way that the project developer retains some level of control over the management structure and therefore has authority to maintain that relationship with the hotel operator and to comply with their obligations. Now, this is different from a villa project, which doesn't have the same type of requirements. You can always create a management type structure like a management committee if that's something that you wanted to create for that project. And we've certainly had developers that wanted to create that kind of homeowners association that investors could look into this project and say, okay, we're getting a say in how things are done. Now, when we're looking at some of these risks, I want to get into more specifics for the project developer versus the hotel operator. So the intended use of the property, as we've gone over, is important. And you have to, again, think about what are your land use rights. If you're that project developer, you want to make sure that it's relatively clear as to how you plan to secure those rights and how you plan to enter that project into the hotel operator's business model. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a hotel. It can be a branded residence like a serviced apartment. It can be short-term versus long-term. But you need to think about what that structure is and how that's going to affect the management contracts that you enter into with the hotel brand. You have to think about what are the obligations that are put into that hotel management contract or that branded residence contract that you're entering into. Typically, if you're looking to enter into that contract with a hotel operator, what they're going to do is look at the types of penalties that can be imposed in the event that you don't comply with your obligations under the contract. But if you're a project owner, you have to be thinking about, well, what happens if the law changes and I can no longer comply with the obligations under this contract? Does that constitute, for instance, a force majeure event? This is a change of law, and the question is an open one. We don't know yet. There are some things that are uncertain, but we have to work within the framework that we have. Vietnam being a very dynamic market, everyone wants to enter the market. We see lots of interest in different hospitality projects. You see major growth in branded residences, and you see lots of investors, particularly Vietnamese investors, I would say more so than foreign investors as you see in other markets, really looking at these properties and getting quite interested in them. So you really need to make sure that you're maintaining your contracts, not just between your compliance as a project developer with the obligations under the hotel management or branded residence contract or licensing agreement, but you also need to think about that in terms of what is contained in your sales documents. What are your obligations to the buyers once they enter into it? If you're entering into a management structure and you're no longer allowed to provide that, who's then liable for the default? And what are the consequences for you as a developer? These all need to be very carefully navigated because as a developer, you don't want to be both liable to your owners for breaching your hotel management contract or your branded residence contract, and then also liable to the hotel operator, where you're getting hit from both sides. So as a developer, you really need to think about how you're balancing those risks, particularly in Vietnam with potential changes in law. And while change in law in Vietnam is great, I love it, the law changes all the time. Generally speaking, I shouldn't love it, but I do because it creates clarity. We're not getting a whole bunch of laws that say something which is totally contradictory to what we were doing before. We're getting recognition by the government that something wasn't working and they needed to clarify how it should work in the future. And of course, that also comes to another issue, but I'll bring that up when we get to the hotel operator slide. Now, if you're the hotel operator, you have a similar set of risks that you need to navigate. You want to make sure that for the entire term of that hotel management contract or that branded residence contract, that your property, number one, is going to stay under that brand. Number two, that they're complying with the brand obligations. And number three, that you don't have a whole lot of negative press because the owner has sold to a bunch of owners without including sufficient protections in the sale agreements that ensure that this relationship gets maintained. So this is something that from an operator perspective, you want to be here, but you need to understand those risks. And of course, from the operator's perspective, as I said in the previous slide, you want to make sure that you have both financial penalties that are applicable in the event that the project developer breaches the contract. So for instance, if you have a whole bunch of sales which are not compliant with the obligations, or there aren't restrictions on redesigning your villa. So if you buy a villa and you want to design it under your own design and you want to enter it into the rental pool, you need to make sure that that doesn't happen. You don't want a whole bunch of individual units with specific designs for each specific unit. You want to make sure that there is consistency between the different units in the project so that they can be entered into a rental pool and feel comfortable that it meets the brand standards. So I'm sure a lot of you have looked at, for instance, condominium units throughout Vietnam, and you've seen a whole range of designs within a single building. I know when I first moved here, I looked at tons of condominium units, one of which looked like I was in a countryside house, but I was on the 20th floor of a high-rise tower. There were no doors, everything was wood. It was very confusing. I had to crawl through a small doorway to get to one of the bedrooms. But that's some of the fun of Vietnam, but if you're a brand, you definitely don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that it's very clear. So finally, for the hospitality operator, you really also want to make sure that your penalty clauses are enforceable. So in Vietnam, you have restrictions on what kinds of penalties and how you classify them and how they can be enforced. So you have certain limitations under the commercial law, for instance, which could cap the penalties at 8% of the breach value, which may not be sufficient to cover what the damages are that you put into your contract. So you need to understand those risks. You also need to think about how you're classifying those penalties and whether or not they're going to be legally enforceable based upon the language that you use. So if you're using a liquidated damages provision, it may or may not be considered to be enforceable depending on what the courts will ultimately say. And finally, you also want to be thinking about what is the jurisdiction that you're resolving these disputes in. So for a lot of hospitality operators, and Carolina and I were talking about that not too long ago, there was this big debate between Singapore law versus Vietnam law, arbitration in Vietnam versus arbitration elsewhere. These are some of the things you need to think about in terms of how you're going to enforce those legal obligations. So just because you have it in the contract and you feel good and you get your SIAC decision does not necessarily mean that that SIAC decision is going to be legally enforceable in Vietnam. Generally speaking, Vietnam is a member of the New York Convention, so should be enforcing arbitration decisions. But of course, there's always exceptions under the law which allow for instance, decisions which are contrary to public policy as a basis to invalidate that decision. And that has to be very carefully thought about when you're entering into this. So, I know I've talked a lot already.
We can clearly see your passion.
I tried to speak as fast as possible so that at least some of you could get a question in.
Anyway, thank you, Paul, for your preparation. I believe that it's not easy to making law easier for people to understand. Mauro could easily up beautiful photos, but for law it's not easy at all. Yeah, and Paul will be around. I'll make sure he will be here to take some question later. Now coming up, maybe I need to invite the next panel discussion. Please be invite Mr. Neil McGregor, Managing Director of Savills Vietnam, to run the next panel discussion on branded residence and hotel investment. Thank you.
All right,
Paul?
thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Nhum, and well done, Mauro, Nhum, and team for laying on such a fantastic event. I think you'll all agree it's great to have everyone back together. So the next panel is to discuss the hot topic, not just in Vietnam, but globally, of branded residences. And then we'll go on to speak a bit about hotel investment as we start to see the recovery in Vietnam. Branded residences globally have seen 230% growth over the last decade. And you heard Mauro comment on the growth we're going to see over the next few years in Vietnam, around 127 projects growing to 261 projects with brands in the next few years. We've also seen the number of brands double over that same decade. And we've seen branded residences across the globe achieving approximately 30% premiums over standard condominium projects. So there's clearly a motivation for developers to go down this route. We'll touch upon some of the trends also around increased amenities for such projects and the increasing emphasis on wellness post-pandemic. There's obviously been a lull in investment transactions due to the pandemic, but huge anticipation for what the next few years might bring as we see the recovery and we continue to see the growth in domestic tourism as well. So I'll ask each of our panelists to quickly introduce themselves. We've got a fantastic panel here for you today with a very broad range of experience. So Peter, would you like to just provide a quick introduction and then we'll go across the panel.
I guess before I begin, is this social safe distance?
I think we're okay there. We're in a healthy environment.
Okay. My name is Peter Meyer. I am Chief Executive Officer of Lodges Holdings. We are a full-service integrated hotel development, investment, and operating business, and with a strong focus on Vietnam, but with interest in Cambodia and aspirations to expand the business regionally. We have the Fusion brand that I think folks would know about. And we have a management business as well that includes Glow in Thailand.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm Carolina. I'm the Senior Director for Radisson Hotel Group and Managing Director of this country. For much pleasure that I'm saying that we opened the business unit here, based here. And I truly believe, and we as a company truly believe in this country. We have 1,700 hotels across the globe with 8 distinctive brands. So far, you know only 2, Radisson Blu and Radisson. We opened last week 2 more in this country, and we look forward actually to bring the other 5 brands into Vietnam. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chiara. I'm the Executive Director, Legal Transactions for SC Capital. SC Capital is a private equity fund investing pan-Asia, including Vietnam, in everything real estate, including hospitality. Very pleased to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Nguyễn Gia Long. I'm a special counsel at Baker McKenzie. Baker McKenzie is an international law firm. We are a full-service law firm. We do literally everything regarding to law. In Vietnam, we have been here for 30 years. In the practice, my daily practice is real estate And major part of it is hospitalities, including M&A of the hotels, hotel managements. So glad to be here. Good to see a full house, and excited that to share with you all what we know and what I have to say. Thank you.
My name is Gibran Bukhari. I'm representing Masterize Homes. Masterize Homes is responsible for bringing world-class excellence to the Vietnamese market. We are the largest branded residence developer in Southeast Asia. Thank you to be here.
Great, thank you very much for the introductions. Maybe we can go in reverse order. Yeah, round of applause for everyone, thank you. We'll maybe work our way back again. So with the branded residences topic, do we see branded residences as the new norm in Vietnam? And what do we see as the pros and cons of branded residences versus other forms of housing?
I think being in the industry for a little bit, you sense the pulse when you enter into a country, and especially when you enter into a city. And it's undeniable, the pulse that's here in Vietnam. I mean, when you look at luxury and you look at luxury real estate, it's fueling the interest of all of our clients. Customers have become so demanding in their needs and wants that it's a natural progression for anybody to be interested in this level of product because the element of service that's provided for each and every residence. We travel, we go on vacation. One has to really look at the clean line between urban branded residences and resort branded residences, and there is a very, very solid line in between the two of them. Each one of them have their own rights, feeling, and experiences. But the urban branded residents are catered and tailor-made for a clientele who has high demands on their everyday lifestyle. And in Vietnam, I think this is a big void for many, many people residing here in both of, or a lot of the major cities here in Vietnam, is the level of service that is provided in their normal residences.
Thank you. Long?
I do agree. You know, if you look at the branded residence, there's a clear difference. You know, if you're using the project on the land, which has a land title being the residential land, it's totally different that you're using the project on the land, which is the under title of that land is commercial and service land. So the legally is a two kind of way for you to look at, right? Residential land is governed under the housing law as well as the land law. Meanwhile, for the, you know, this is normally a city urban residential project. Meanwhile, you're looking for the resort destination where mostly is a commercial and service land, 50 years ownership, and then the development and segment is different as well. So I would say branded resident is more than a lifestyle, but it also can give you, in Vietnam especially, it give you some gain in terms of value, but mostly is an experience.
I'll wear the investor's hat. I think in terms of the demographics of Vietnam today, you have a lot of young people traveling the world. And so for them, branded residence actually lifts the quality of life, the experience. So I do think branded residence is here to stay. What brand, what's suitable for the segments or, you know, the demographics in Vietnam would be for the operators to start finding out.
It's a great point. It's not all about super luxury. We can have branded residences at all segmentations. So we've got Gibran representing the luxury end, but there's plenty of other options out there as well. Carolina?
Yes, I agree. So we can start as an upscale product because at the end of the day, we need to, you know, justify the fees. So I will not go lower than that. But it's true, we are not selling a room anymore, we are selling a lifestyle. So it doesn't exist, that concept anymore. And I agree that Vietnamese right now, after they went around, look at the world, now they want the same service that they are used to have when they are traveling abroad. And they are bringing it into their own country. And this one is through operators, international operator. What is, for me, it's a win-win situation. As usual, the brand get recognition, and the project developer, or whatever you want to call it, get their premium. So it's a win-win situation here, and we need to be very careful about the premium. Premium depends. If we are talking about an upscale, you mentioned 30%. Please don't expect 30%. Oh no, please don't get this in mind. Depends on, please be careful, depends on the location, on the quality of your product, of the quantity of your product. It also depends on what is going to be the facilities and how we can attract our guests or residents or whatever we want to call it. So this is very, very important. So the premium doesn't go because you put a brand on top, then the premium is absolutely, without, oh, I just got a premium. Doesn't work like that. It works if there is a complete due diligence done, and if the operator is involved on day one, if there is a project team, and then the project team involve the developer, involve the operator, involve legal, involve technical, involve design, involve so many aspects. So, and that's the right way to go for me.
So the question is, are branded residences here to stay? The short answer is yes. Vietnam is no different than anywhere else, and people get a psychic gratification by identifying with a brand. So brands are very much here to stay, and one can just look at the streets of any major urban center, or even in the rural areas, to see how much people identify with brands, whether they are a residence or a handbag or a tie or anything else. So they are very much here to stay.
Thank you, everyone. So it's good to know that branded residences are going to be a core part of the market going forward. Maybe we can touch on how much growth we can see. And Gibran's worked in some of the highest growth markets in the world, in the Middle East, has experience from those markets. Perhaps he can share some of that experience and how he thinks Vietnam will fare trying to replicate some of that growth.
It's a great question, Neil. Many moons ago, I arrived in Dubai when Dubai was like an open box. It was an empty box. It was a place that was just flat and it was full of sand. And it was around 2005. And the market had just changed to allow foreign investors to invest into Dubai. Not the UAE, but invest into Dubai. And Dubai was named the city of cranes. And everywhere you went, you saw cranes turning and developments happening. And arriving in Vietnam, it's the exact same sentiment, just a lot faster. I mean, if I look at the speed and the demand for the highest level of standard of living, I think this far, far surpasses Dubai when Dubai was kicking off. And I do feel that each and every client or each and every person that's looking at Vietnam sees Vietnam's future and sees the potential of the Vietnamese economy. And that being said, I think Mauro's slide really ticked off a lot of the boxes when it comes to zoning down to Vietnam as a location. I mean, you have everything that you could imagine. Dubai had to create everything. Vietnam has everything. Vietnam just needs to enhance everything, showcase everything, and repackage it so that it's acceptable to people who have gained a certain standard of living. And I think that this is one of the fastest paced markets I've been in, with the highest demand and a clientele that is very, very knowledgeable. People are worldly, they travel, they experience, especially when it comes to younger people. They've become accustomed to these brands, or brands have fueled their life and their ambitions from the time they're 2 and 3 years old. There's kids today with Gucci shoes on, and parents buy Gucci shoes for their kids, and they know their feet grow in 3 months, but they still do it. This is what's fueling everybody's ambition and desires. So reaching that level of success in life where you can afford to acquire assets that are branded, which hold their value, and you can make one of them your secondary home or your primary home, it's just a natural progression for a market just as fast-paced as Vietnam.
So you've heard the bullish sentiment on the demand there. Hopefully those questions regarding oversupply will remain distant with the strength of that demand.
16 years later, Neil, Dubai every year is plagued with the word oversupply. And every year, projects are sold out because population grows, right? That place that was yesterday a place where nobody could live because it was too expensive or there were no options has become open to the world. And the world has demands to live a lifestyle in places where makes them feel comfortable, where they can work, live, and play. It's a perfect balance.
Fantastic. Well, Dubai's been very reliant on the international brands, and we heard some talk around domestic brands here in Vietnam. And I'd like to ask some of the panelists, Peter, you've had experience developing brands and rolling out brands here in Vietnam. And then Carolina, maybe give the other side of the story. So advice for developers maybe considering developing their own brands from Peter, and then Carolina, why you would maybe push them in the direction of the international brand.
Well, within our business, we have both international brands through third-party operators, be that Raffles in Cambodia or Sofitel Legend Metropole in Hanoi. I was fortunate enough, I appreciate the kudos for developing the brand, but I was fortunate enough when our business came together some 5.5 years ago, myself and the team inherited a brand called Fusion. Fusion is a organic, homegrown brand here in Vietnam. It feels like we've gotten pretty good traction and people know it. We're a lifestyle brand for, relative to our resort properties and have a distinctive design. And it's been a good thing because particularly if you're looking at moving real estate through branded residences, the association, as we're talking about with Fusion, people get a psychic gratification, and there's a, beyond the facilities and services and software and everything else of identifying it, which I think is a pervading theme that's coming up in this panel.
Great, thank you, Peter. Carolina, why the mainstream operators, the international brands?
Actually, it's easier. You are tapping into, I'm giving you the key to a car. So we've done everything for you. So that's what you are looking for. Otherwise, you have to go and talk to PMS and say, okay, oh my God, now I need to build my PMS system. Oh my God, I need to have and tap into my sales. Oh, I need to go and do the design. Or I need to do this and that. So for us, it's one stop. You come to us, we're going to take care of you. We're going to sign from the first step, and we're going to bring you to the opening. So what else is the best? To have one stop, one solution, one tienda. Okay. So, and I'm not saying in the future for sure we will have more competitors, but I want to ask you here, if you're traveling tomorrow, are you going to be an international brand? Are you going to choose an international brand? Traveling right now on Agoda, Booking, whatever you want to use, Radisson.com or whatsoever, you're going to use an international hotel or you're going to use something that you don't know. What you're going to choose? That's a question to you. For me, I will choose an international brand. I will choose security. I will choose, I know, from A to Z, I arrive, the room, clearly we are going to local, clearly needs to be localized, the product, needs to be bespoke. But at the end of the day, I have the same service in Ho Chi Minh City or in Sydney or in Rome. And that's also what you are going to buy. And that's why you are buying at a premium.
So we're starting to address some of the challenges. So that was the first choice you've got to make. So after the excitement of the sales period, once Savills have sold out all your branded residences for you, what about the ongoing management? Is it simple? What sort of challenges can we expect? Carolina, do you want to continue?
if it's framed correctly since the beginning, and this is where I stretch the point to have your project team in place since day one. If we really carefully look at everything Paul and Tuan can say legally wise or SPA, or I don't want to bother you or boring you with all this, but it's fundamental, I think. You know, what I always say to my client is that we are gonna be married for 15 years. We are not gonna go on a date one night and the day after we are not there anymore, right? And especially now that we are opening the business unit, we are here on the development, we are here in the technical service, we are here at the opening. So I will be there for you, right? So what I'm saying is, it's a long path. Let's do it right, and then we try to minimize the risk, we compromise. At the end of the day, marriage is compromising, right? So again, win-win situation, and I think is the best. I don't want to go on the bad side or the good side. I think compromising, when you do a negotiation, what it is compromise. There is nothing actually that is perfect in this life. No one sign a contract as I send it ever in my life. They always come back. It's always to find the middle point between an owner, the developer, and an operator. It's always there, is how we can collaborate together, how we can make this project work, how can we make this project successful. There is no one way.
Thank you. Gibran, do you want to touch on this topic?
I mean, there's a lot that we can say. I'll tell you that in my experience, I think that today we've got to fill voids. We've got to fill a lot of voids that we have in the market, and customers have big wants, big needs, big desires. And if we are not able to bring together and narrow the gap between many different places in the world, then we have not utilized where we are today with technology. We've bridged the gap where we can travel anywhere in the world. People are traveling all over. Why should I be able to live a certain level of standard in New York that I can't live in Vietnam? Why is it so important that bringing in a big brand that is well known when you're making an investment, gives you a sense of reassurance? I mean, most major brands end up acquiring the smaller brands once they become successful. So if we find these new niche brands that get developed, it's a natural progression that maybe a bigger chain would come and take over that once they become very successful. However, from my experience, I see clients tend to sign, as you've mentioned, with companies that they know, especially when you're engaging in a long-term contract like a marriage. It gives that sense of security because I know that they've gone through that trial and error. I know they have the mileage. They've experienced the ups and downs of a market, and they know how to provide services to the end user. I think sometimes I'm a fan of both of them. I get experience and feelings from major brands and new brands, and I enjoy them both equally. I just find that the attraction goes towards longevity and a historical trial and error, in my opinion.
Thank you, Gibran. Peter?
So the question is it a difficult management proposition? And again, the answer would be yes. You've got multiple owners that you need to manage, and from our experience, having these, it can be a challenge, whether it's CapEx requirements, whether in the case of guaranteed yields, meeting investment parameters and everything else. Sure, so it's much more difficult having a situation with a number of owners than it would be a simple owner-manager proposition.
I think a lot of the international brands obviously bring years of experience in the full operating structure, but also it's important to have local knowledge on the ground, and we've talked a lot about the complications of operating in Vietnam, and having that local knowledge is key. And something Savills are looking at is working with brands on a white labeling basis, so working with their brands, and maybe Savills offering our property management expertise, our years of experience here on the ground from a property management perspective as a potential solution as well. Coastal destinations. Is it a good investment for buyers, buying a branded residence in a coastal destination? And leading on from that, is a rental pool contract something buyers can rely on? Long, do you want to comment on that?
I think in overall, it's a good investment. Right? If you look at the lifestyle, all the high standard that you can enjoy at your property, especially the property is well managed, well maintained, and then it gives you a little bit of the rental yield, right? Rental income when you lease it out. And overall that, as you know, in Vietnam, the land value is rocketly high over time. So it probably give you a gain when you're considering reselling it. So there's a lot of upsides when you think about, whether it's a good investment. And secondly, you asked about the rental contract, right? Rental contract is, what you heard is about when you buy it and you plan to lease it back or put it into the rental program for the operators to manage as a hotel inventories of your unit. So looking at that is always, in two sides, right? From the developer point of view, you consider whether or not you have a good drafting of your contract, whether or not your draft contract is consistent with what you agree with the international operators in terms of FF&B reserve, in terms of management fees, and how to balance with, between the base fee and incentive compared to those management fee that you were collecting from the owners. And there's a lot to deal with as well, when you look at the rental contract, like complimentary stays, how many days, whether or not it's mandatory rental pool, what happened with the non-rental units, right? How to contribute into the common areas for the maintenance and upgradings. A lot to consider. And then if you have a good consultant, of course you have a good drafting. Then on the other side, if you are assuming the buyer, what you look at in terms of the rental pool contract, what is a critical point or provision in the contract that you should look into to protect yourself, right? Is of course normally from buyer point of view would be a limited information that you can get of, but always there's a internal rules to be attached with the rental pool contract. You see, what is internal rules look like, whether or not the project has a homeowner association, which is giving you a certain kind of voting right as a homeowner, whether or not the P&L looks okay to you in terms of percentage and numbers, right? What is your end rental incomes after the net income look like, and whether or not there's a certain performance test, that the owner is giving you, because for mixed-use project, including hotels and branded residence, there's a certain kind of relationship, kind of commitment between the operator and owner that you may not know. So there's a lot of things, if you're thinking about it, but the key is always carefully review the contract, the SPA, internal rules, the rental pool contract, make sure your right is well protected, and doesn't hurt to have a consultant to help you looking at there.
Use a lawyer and it's a great investment, seems to be the message.
Can I add
Peter, yeah, please, Chiara.
Actually, I think there's always a misunderstanding. So I think to the end buyers, do we understand what is the value proposition we're getting? And so I think in a lot of contracts, we get buried into the words without understanding, and then all of a sudden, oh, I can't use this residence during the time that I'm on holiday because it's in that pool, but I thought I had a reservation of how many days can I use a year. So I think that explanation needs to be explained to your buyers, because I think that's where the misunderstanding with the end buyers, and hence branded residents in Vietnam at the moment. I know it's here to stay and I believe in it, but I think there needs to be education in terms of what are the benefits.
Of course, a good sales agent should be getting that message across clearly. Yeah.
Yes.
Peter, you've had a huge amount of success in coastal destinations. Any comments on the success of those investments from your buyers' perspectives?
I mean, in simple terms, people like to be on the seaside. So assuming the polar caps don't melt and deluge the coastal lines, it's a long-term good bet to be there. I mean, that's simply put, mountains and sea and the seaside. Relative to the second question, which was around the guaranteed yields and so forth and so on, my simple response there would be that as long as things are going well, there's no problem. But if things don't go well, then that's obvious. You know, it's a pretty obvious one. But then that's where you really would run into to issues, and a lot of developers are basically using the emolument of guaranteed yields as a way to finance the real estate. And I'm not saying it's a house of cards, but if things start to fall apart, then some of these developers may not have the balance sheets to sustain those income guarantees.
Carolina, you wanted to jump in?
No, I want to pick up on your point and saying that normally owners benefit, right, is one of the things that attract unit buyers because they are, for an international operator, they are not only allowed to go to, example, Radisson Blu, and I don't know, now we don't have one, Munich, but they are allowed to go also Radisson Blu in Frankfurt or Radisson Blu, so they are part of membership. So this is what also the developer, I think, use in order to sell. So, and that's why I repeat myself one more time. We need to work together, because if you promise 15 days, 30 days, and then you come to me and you put me a PTC clause saying that you need to perform 90% above GOP and RevPAR, et cetera, then I'm going to push back on your 30 days. Because we cannot perform. So if I have 200 owners coming, enjoy their residencies, but then I have also my obligation into the developer, then this collides. So I think all the parties need to be, together. And that's one again. I think everyone here, you have everyone on stage, and I think each of us needs to be in the same room, in the same day, to make a successful. I'm not only say branded residence, but a successful hotel, a successful asset for every single stakeholder here.
Thank you. So after what we've been through the last couple of years, I think we're all looking for how the hospitality market can be sustainable going forward, and what the authorities can maybe be offering to help with that. Maybe, Chow, do you want to comment? Long, you've been given the elbow. Long,
Neil,
do you want to kick that off?
Just to say, 5 minutes left. If you want any question, anything, we got
Any questions, please prepare them. We'll let Long comment and then open up to the floor. Sustainability, what the authorities could be offering.
We've been talking to our clients every day about the ESR kind of programs from the client side. If you are a client who have funds, right, they're looking for sustainability investments. And also, it's like last few weeks I was attending a JOL's event, which, main part of it was about how the developer get the edge or the lead certificates. It's a little bit of more investment for you at the very, very beginning, but you get it paid back very soon. So what should we say in terms of the hospitalities and leisure resort developments? You are now, looking at, since we have more and more clients asking us about, their business plan to be investing into the kind of the spiritual resort or the wellness, health, focus kind of destinations. We have a yoga center, retreats, and all that. So especially after this COVID, those things are getting more popular. And of course, the project needs to have all the kind of, three sustainabilities, you gotta have like no plastic straws and all that. So we see that is a trend. And I know that, even IMF is sponsoring and giving loans to your project if you want to do sustainabilities. So there's a huge, support from the government as well. Ministry of Construction is totally full hand supporting that. And they encourage you to invest into that kind of project with the H or LEED certificates.
Thank you, Long. Any questions from the floor? Yep. Ken.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, Ken Atkinson. I've got a couple of observations first and then a question. I think I don't disagree with really very much that's been said. I agree with most of it. But I think we have to remember that, Vietnam's not Dubai. We're not a center for aviation. We don't have flights coming in en route to anywhere other than Vietnam at the moment. And we don't have the same freedom of, and I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but freedom of entry that I think Dubai has. So, nobody's raised the issue in terms of the growth of the hotel sector or the branded residence sector of foreign buyers and foreign visitors, and the problems still with visas. And we need to be pushing the government to expand visa exemptions as a first thing. There's lots of issues, as we've heard, with land leases. And then when we come on to the management, and Caroline, I think I've been married 4 times, so longevity of relationships is not a strong point, but nevertheless, I mean, the challenges I see there are particularly with, I think, yes, they're going to help sell the properties, and that's great. And it's great to have the names, I think, if you're an investor. But I think local buyers, local investors, the challenge I see is in kind of management fees when we get down to the nitty-gritty. And I've been on the other side of a few discussions on this over the last couple of years. The buyers, owners are incredibly sensitive to any increase in management fees, even after 5, 6, 7 years, right? And obviously there's going to be a premium for branded residences. And the question I was going to ask was actually for Neil. How do you see branded residences as opposed to a Savills managed property? But you half answered that saying you're going to go white label, so you're playing in both camps, right? But I mean, what's really the difference? I mean, I can see the differences, but how do you see the differences?
Well, I mean, I think there's all kinds of different models, and that's really what we've lined up on the panel today. We've got the locally developed brands, we've got the foreign brands, we heard the hybrid models referred to earlier. I've mentioned the white label, and no one model is absolutely right for the entire market. And it's really about identifying who your target market is for your particular project. And I think that's what all developers should set out to achieve. I think, Ken, your points are regarding the sustainability of the market, the opening up, and how the market should be structured going forward, absolutely key. And that was really what I was getting at with the sustainability going forward. Quick question to all the panelists to wrap up.
Do you mind? Just 1 second. I just want to address the comment. Dubai went through teething curves as well. Visa issues were an issue when we first started in getting into Dubai. Entry into Dubai was a teething process. It was not easy. But lo and behold, things progress as technology progresses. And I think at a standpoint today, Vietnam is a lot more easier than Dubai was when I first moved to Dubai. And that being said, Vietnam is not an aviation hub like Dubai, but it is a manufacturing hub. And it's a manufacturing hub that has taken over global supply for many key industries. That being said, we noticed that during the lockdown of last year when the world stopped getting their product. You know, the factories closed down. It wasn't only a month before Puma, Nike, Adidas said 45% of their global market share of supply was affected. You know, 34% of American furniture is produced in Vietnam, surpassing China by 33%. So when we look at this, we're now talking about Vietnam being an international business hub. And that being said, I think we are at the point of where Dubai was when it started. I think technology has granted us the accessibility to allow Vietnam to progress faster because we didn't have the technology back then. But it's taken Dubai 16 years to get where it is today. It's not that you can compare just immediately here. Here's Dubai and here's Vietnam. It's a work in progress.
I'll let you take that further with Ken later. But appreciate the optimism. Fantastic. Great to see. Quick question to wrap up. Would you buy a branded residence, coastal or urban? Peter.
Coastal.
Carolina.
City.
Coastal, I think.
Where, Chow? Where in Vietnam?
Not Da Nang.
Not Da Nang. Okay.
Coastal. But also up in the mountain, I also like that too.
City all the way.
I didn't expect anything else,
Gibran. I work a lot. I stay in the city all day. So I want those services morning, noon, and night.
Great. Well, thank you very much to all the panelists. Round of applause. We didn't really get onto the investment subject. If you'd like to hit any of us up later in the day, please do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Coming up next, please invite on stage Ms. Catherine, Chief Commercial Officer from Quo Global. She will deliver a very fantastic presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's fantastic to be here back in Vietnam after 2.5 years. For those of you who don't know, I'm Catherine. I'm Chief Commercial and Branding Officer at Quo Global. Quo is a brand strategy and creative agency, head office in Bangkok. We're 25 years old, but we also have a thriving office here in Vietnam, in Saigon, where we've been operating for 10 years and working with many of the big hotel groups, both local brands and international brands across the country. So today I want to talk to you about change, a fundamental change that's impacting the way we think and interact with spaces. This is a hotel. Essentially, it's a box. It's a box where a series of defined experiences take place. There's the lobby, where we check in. There's the room where we sleep. And there's the restaurant where we eat. So essentially, it's a box with a series of smaller boxes inside. Similarly, we shop in a supermarket, we drink coffee in a cafe, we work out in a gym, and we go to work in an office. For a very long time, these kinds of spaces have been designed to serve singular or primary functions. but times have changed. If we've learned anything during the last two and a half years of COVID, is the irrelevance of single-use spaces. We've learned that from the comfort of one space, in most cases our home, we can do many things. We can work, we can shop, we can eat and entertain, we can educate, and we can work out. So during the various lockdowns that we've endured, we've realized that we don't need different spaces for each of these different functions. We can all do them all from pretty much anywhere, wherever that may be, whether that's our home, whether that's a hotel, whether that's somewhere else in the world. Welcome to Hybrid Lives. No, this is not the name of a new series on Netflix. This is real, where doing one thing in one space is no longer interesting, relevant, or productive. But what do we mean by hybrid? And we've been hearing the word hybrid a few times this afternoon, and I have a slightly different take on what we mean by hybrid. The famed hotelier Ian Schrager has talked about hybrid recently in an article for the Times newspaper of London. He talked about this idea of mini vertical cities. So he sees a future where you will live upstairs, you'll come downstairs to your office, all of your experiences, whether that's retail, entertainment, it will all be in one place, and it's literally moving around one building. He says that's the future, and I think he may be right. But we believe that there are two types of hybrid spaces, and I'll take you through those. The first is easy. It's a physical space that serves multiple purposes. So think, for example, of a hotel lobby that maybe has a co-working function built in. I think many of you will know Ace Hotels out of New York. Ace was one of the first hotel brands in our industry to really pioneer this idea of a multifunctional, multidimensional lobby, bringing in local workers with their big communal tables, their coffee partnerships, their bars, their F&B experiences, catering to the local community by offering them spaces and utilizing that otherwise dead space of the lobby. Another type of hybrid space, bringing different purposes together, is a brand called Zenny in London, in the UK. Zenny did something very clever. They noticed a space issue with student accommodation in the UK. So for 2 or 3 months of the year, students go home, and these premium apartment spaces are sitting there empty. So what they do is during the summer months, they come in, they occupy the space, and they rent them out Airbnb style. So again, making double use of this space. The other type of hybrid space is a little bit more complicated, and it's something that's really developing and growing at the moment, is when we're merging a real space in the real world with something that's digital or virtual. We're starting to see this. So for example, a simple example would be maybe a gym where you're using VR goggles to transport your run to a more exotic location. Or perhaps a bar that uses projection mapping on the walls. So you walk in, you're in a bar in Saigon, but actually it feels like you're on the streets of Tokyo or somewhere else. So the solution seems simple, right? You take your existing single-use space and you add in another function. But no, it's not. This is not a tick box exercise. This is what I call a jumping out of the box exercise. In fact, I urge you to tear down the walls or even get rid of that box altogether. So as we think about hybrid spaces, I think there are 3 critical ingredients that we need to remember. The first is culture, the second, connection, and the third, community. So let's go through those one by one, and I'll explain more clearly. Culture is about the values and behaviors that bind our societies together. They define us, they give us an identity, they frame who we are. They create that shared purpose that whether it's in your neighborhood, your town, your city, your district, your country, culture defines us and the people that we connect with. And when we think about hotels, for a long time, hotels were conceived as towering islands in the midst of cities, sort of places where the outsider was very much welcome, but had little relevance or meaning for the local people around them. Luckily, times have changed, and I think many of us are now seeing the urgent need to create hotel experiences that connect and engage with the local communities, connect with the local culture. As Rob Vagamans of Concrete has so rightly said, we need to make sure we're not an alien in the neighborhood, but we are one of them. A great example here in Saigon. We had the great privilege a few years ago to help create and conceive the Wink brand. And at the core of Wink was the idea of creating a new type of hotel experience that was both for the domestic traveler, but also for the local resident in the city in which Wink hotels go. And the team behind Wink, Michael Perro, the CEO, has talked very much about this idea of creating a space where a local person can walk in and say, this is my lobby, this is my coffee shop, this is my local bar, this is my local working space. And as a result, Wink lobbies have been conceived and created very much as these multidimensional spaces with lots of different things going on, and really connecting with the culture and understanding the need. So when you think about culture, when you think about the community you're serving, really look outside, open your eyes to the culture that surrounds your hotel and think about, how do I create a hybrid space that really answers a need? What is that need? What can the community benefit from? What are they missing today? And how can our space answer that need and serve our overarching commercial purpose? The second ingredient after culture is connection. Some of you may know Zoku. Zoku is a brand out of Amsterdam now with a number of hotels across Europe. The founder of Zoku, Hans Meyer, started his idea by traveling the world observing nomadic workers, looking at digital workers and seeing what they needed. And what he noticed was that those people away from home, working away from home and traveling, was that they suffer greatly from isolation and disconnection, that they lack that social interaction that they would normally have. So he conceived Zoku, and Zoku is this, from the outset, a hybrid hospitality experience designed to stay, to live, to work, to socialize. And he created community spaces in his hotels where connectivity was something that was fun, that was easy, and effortless. And having a look around here in Saigon, I came across an interesting concept called Art Hub, obviously on a much smaller scale than Zoku, but a really great example of a local brand creating something built on the idea of connection. Started with the idea of two artists who wanted to create an artistic scene within the city and bring like-minded people together. When it started as a simple coffee shop that then grew into a multifunctional 3-story building where there's an art studio, photography studio, tattoo parlor, and a bar, event space, and has been very successful in naturally, organically forming a community. And that comes to my third thing, community. When you get the ingredients right of your hybrid space, when you think about culture, when you think about connection, often the community part follows, but it does require some effort. Sometimes community requires programming. Sometimes we need to really think about the experiences and the services that we're forming in our spaces and look at how can we activate them, how can we activate our hybrid space and ensure people really come together and form that connectivity in that community. Ricardo Tesaro, the CEO of Gravity Co-Living in the UK, has talked about this need to organize events and activities both inside his spaces and outside that connect his guests together and form that sense of community. And we mustn't forget the second definition of hybrid. So this merging of the real world and the virtual world. I think here in Saigon, a couple of years ago, the Park Hyatt brought Le Petit Chef to its restaurant. And this particular concept has been to many countries around the world and is an early version of this merger of two worlds, projecting the sort of animated character of the chef onto diners' plates and telling the story of their meal as they go through the multi-course experience. But this is just the start. The metaverse is here, and it's big, and many people don't really understand what it is, but it's far more than simply the world of gaming for teenagers and 20-something-year-olds. Sandbox, Decentraland, Roblox are rapidly expanding and permeating our lives. Just a week ago, the leading European lifestyle brand, citizenM, was the first hospitality group to buy land in Sandbox. They will build a virtual hotel experience in the Sandbox that parallels their real life experience. They will sell NFTs and they will create an avatar type experience where people can work and play and sleep in a virtual hotel in the metaverse. This will be the future of hospitality. This is the future of hybrid spaces. And I urge you all to pay attention and take note. Soon, many of our hotel brands will also coexist in the metaverse. So in my opinion, this is not a hotel anymore. At least this is not a hotel that is relevant to the future generation of travelers. Because hybrid is here to stay. And please, I urge you, don't get left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I would love to ask if somebody has some question, but I would love to keep moving because you are here later for the networking, correct? So any question, just grab her somewhere and ask 100 things, same as Paul, which was still waiting his question. Thank you very much. So we are moving to the last part of the conference. The drinks will open fairly soon, and don't just give up and stay in the lobby. We have a lot of other places to explore for the drink and eating. Don't be shy, so go all over this hotel. We are moving to the last part. We'll have now 2 videos, starting with the WATG.
Yes.
If they can show it, and later we'll move to the final panel of luxury design.
Thank you, Mauro, and all attendees of the MTE conference. I am Chiara Calufetti. I am a Vice President with the Architectural Department of WTG in Singapore. Apologies for not being with you today in Ho Chi Minh City. It has been a challenging period for all of us, but we are finally seeing the light of the end of the tunnel. Lots of energy, lots of opportunities in the region opening up. Despite the pandemic, we have been busy. We work a lot in Vietnam, but finally now we're excited to be able to fly in there and to meet you in person in the next couple of months. Vietnam remains a fantastic opportunity for the development of innovative resorts and hospitality concepts. The first consideration that we want to bring to your attention is how you can bring luxury moments and experiences at every price point. Vietnam has the raw material, the culture, the natural environment to provide great opportunities to forge outstanding luxury concepts. And we're working on some fantastic projects in this space. However, not every site, location, or market are appropriate for these top-tier luxury brands, like Four Seasons, the JW, or the Aman, and that's okay. We are aware of developers' desire to activate your sites, to put your project on the map, to have luxury statements with strong brands to go with it. Your wish is really to add value to the overall development. But we also know that in emerging destinations like in Vietnam, it's important that the hotel resort product need to match the budget and the spending appetite of the tourist to keep consistent occupancy, to ensure long-term operational sustainability. So how do you create hotels with lower development cost and positionings, like a 4-star plus, an entry-level 5-star, but still make them highly aspirational with impactful luxury elements? Firstly, by focusing on what guests really want. Concentrate the design effort on highlight elements that become recognizable. This can be done through careful programming in the concept design phase, but also through design framing, highlighting site unique characters and choices of material. My suggestion is do not flatten your site. Second, the exciting range of soft and lifestyle brands coming up to the market are helping us in this respect because they have a limited brand standard and they focus on contextualization. We can incorporate design with flair and where it counts. Next is creating magical and memorable moments across the resort. How can be done? It can be done very easy at a low cost, but high in terms of brand value, profile, and Instagrammability. Natural features on your site, alignments with long views, pointing to sunsets. These are all possibilities. At the same time, you need to think about standardization of elements that repeat, like guest rooms, creating attractive but simple layouts, perhaps only 2 types, to save in design time and construction cost. Lastly, a way to maximize revenue per square meters across the hotel is achieved by creating multi-purpose and flexible spaces. Pop-up, F&Bs that flex, MICE venue that are flexible, that change depending on the seasonal demand. Roof decks can be yoga space in the morning, can become wedding venues in the middle of the day, and in the evening they can become private dining rooms. The second consideration which we would like to share with you is how to design to optimize operations. This is the hidden side of the hotel design, but it's so important. These areas are often overlooked, and when they're poorly designed, their implementation can be irreversible, and this can negatively impact the property for the rest of their life. This equally applies to branded residences. They need to be considered operationally as much as a hotel, understanding what level of service and support is offered to the residents, how they're served, how this impact the back of house areas. This is a conversation that has to take place very early on in the design process. Some of the key points to ensure good operational design are, first, scaling and shaping the back of house area. Second, determine key access and exit points and connectivity to the public areas. Third, considering the flow of staff and also goods. Think about how product and waste come in and go out of the hotel. Fourth, prioritizing adjacencies, whether by minimizing kitchen requirements or optimizing their location in relationship to the F&B outlets. The position of other public areas is also very important in relation to the supporting spaces. Fundamentally, a holistic view is required. Lastly, with staff shortages and labor costs rising, ensuring the hotel design operates efficiently and with a lean headcount, it's key. With real estate sales integral to project success, resort designers in Vietnam need to balance how to maximize investor appeal without compromising the end user experience. When it comes to branded residences, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Whether it's mandatory, optional, or no rental pool, each format requires its own design consideration because fundamentally the usage of space will be different. And this brings us to the third consideration. What we would like to share with you is how to design a for sale product in a resort setting. Despite the need of a bespoke approach, here are a few design considerations to keep in mind when approaching branded residences. First, creating privacy with a strong sense of community by positioning and orienting the residences on the site, choosing the right location of the shared amenities, and carefully designing the access to the main resort facilities. Second, taking an integrated design approach that considers architecture, landscape, interior design in unison, connecting the residential property and the hotel spaces effectively and efficiently. The third element is really thinking on how can flexibility be built into the room inventory. For example, through the creation of lock-off units to balance the optimal for sale typology with the most rentable hospitality units. Careful consideration of the overall amenity strategy and design is needed. How big should they be? And to what extent this should be shared or separated from the supporting hotel? For example, should they have a private reception, a dedicated clubhouse, or a pool? Operationally, how can larger units that are placed back into the rental pool be designed for ease of housekeeping? How should we approach, for example, the design of kitchen and kitchenettes? Consider the potential downstream operational implications like additional housekeeping cost, higher utility cost, or the potential fall in F&B spend. In conclusions, there are some really exciting opportunities in Vietnam. We look forward to develop the next generation of resorts and branded residences together with you. It has been a pleasure to participate to this year's MTE conference. Thank you for inviting WTG, and thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Bill Bensley, and I am so pleased to be able to be part of your convention, your gathering, and called Meet the Experts, I think. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about my new projects, but especially my new book. It's called Morgscapism, and it's a giant sumo book. And right on the cover here is a wonderful project right in Vietnam. That this is up in the M Gallery. It's called Hotel de la Cupola, and it's in Sapa, near the Chinese border. Also in this book are many projects in Vietnam, like the one called Yen Tu, this one here. And as I just flipped through here randomly, it also has new projects for, this is Hotel de la Cupola up in Sapa, and my beautiful hotels in Cambodia are in there, and also Shintamani Wild. And also some projects here in Phu Quoc, the JW Marriott or the Lamarck University. There's lots of coverage there, and also this is all. And I think we also have in here the Capella, which is, I think, is this one here. No, that's not. Look, I'm looking at it upside down now. And also the Rosewood, but Capella in Hanoi, it's also there. But since your project, your meeting is all about sustainability, really what I'd like to talk to you about in more detail is this project right here. It's called Shintamani Wild, and it is a Bensley collection, and it is the pride of my life, right? And it happens that about 6 years ago now, we were offered at an auction part of Cambodia's national forest. It was going up for a uranium mine. So we bought something like a piece of property about the size of Central Park, a huge piece of property, and then I thought, well, what the heck am I going to do with this? And so the obvious answer was, well, we need to protect it because it's under a lot of pressure for both wildlife and logging. So we joined a group called Wildlife Alliance, and they are helping us to alleviate those problems somewhat. The people are always coming to try to extract from our lands and from the national parks. So I had this one idea, is to do this beautiful hotel, and it's only 15 rooms, but they're very expensive rooms. They're something like $2,000 plus per night, all inclusive. And so our guests come here, and they can do many things like kayaking and going up to the estuary and zip lining into the property, which is fantastic. And they can gather things in the food in the jungle. But this is a very sustainable way of developing natural areas because it leaves very little footprint. These 15 tents over something like 10,000 hectares. And it's a very good way to raise the money in order to be able to protect and to police this huge piece of land that we have. So if you have any huge pieces of land that need protecting in Vietnam, I'm more than happy to help you. More escapism. Enjoy your conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and now we'll move to the final part of the conference. I have my panel to set up. Nhung, you want to say something? The drinks are about to open, so just stay with us another 20-30 minutes, and then we all celebrate and connect.
Yeah, we have the drink in the breaker room on the left side, and after that we will have some more cooking show and F&B served by Lee Yavin. Thank you.
I think we have one. You don't know where it is. Yes, let me see. Rolf there. All right. You almost get it. So just mention Sergio, and then people will associate the hair with the face with the person. Was a joke. Okay, thank you. I'll just ask everybody to introduce yourself so that those nice people here will know who you are and what you do for a living. Felice, please.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Felice Jacobellis. I'm the director of Sir Halo. Sir Halo is an interior design company specialized in hospitality design. So we are based here in Saigon and taking care for all kind of hospitality projects.
Hello, my name is Sérgio Silva. I'm the founding and partner manager of Esplaza Vietnam. We are architecture and urban design company from Portugal, already here 12 years.
Hi, my name's Matt Young. I'm the General Director of Group GSA. We're an integrated design company. We do architecture, interior, landscape and urban design. So we like to conceive things right from the very early stage all the way through to the taps and fixtures and the pool. Very happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rolf. I'm the head of design for Fusion Hotel Group. Well represented today, so I don't have to introduce the group anymore, I think. We had two speakers before already associated with my company. And I lead the in-house design department of our group.
Thank you, Rolf. Yes, we needed to make a sustainability and wellness point stronger, so we want Fusion to be everywhere. Okay, so I'll ask the first question because we're talking about luxury. So I'll ask the first question to my panelists. What is luxury to you? How would you define, how you will explain a developer what luxury could be in hospitality? Please, Felice.
Well, I think luxury is kind of like a very individual kind of like sentiment, and probably people have different definition of that. But for me, it is kind of like escape from the masses, escape from the city, go to a place where you're kind of like not alone, but not kind of like surrounded by too many people, and where you can actually connect or reconnect with nature. So that's for me kind of like the definition of luxury.
And how this will enter into the design process. So if you have to guide a developer into this kind of luxury, what would you suggest them to look into?
Well, I mean, these type of luxury then kind of like, requires actually a lot of space and a lot of resources, and which is then probably not easy for most of the projects because of the restrictions. So as I said, I mean, there's kind of like different ways to define luxury. That's probably one of the more difficult one to actually put into reality.
Thank you. So luxury is not marble everywhere in the floor.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I said, people have different definitions of that, and I think that the typical definition of luxury, let's say, for maybe of so many people in Asia, is actually kind of like marble bathrooms and golden taps and so on. But I believe that this is something what is going to change. So I think that was kind of like the luxury of yesterday. But marble bathrooms become kind of like something kind of like more like day-to-day kind of like thing. So it's not like something what people don't have anymore. And what people nowadays want, or what people in the future want, is something what they actually cannot have in day-to-day life. And I think that I believe is kind of like more kind of like connecting with nature and being away from city life and a lot of people.
Thank you. Sergio, please, your opinion over luxury.
Well, for S plus A, the luxuries, we based it 3 main points. One is a holistic process with all entities that is involving in the project. The second one is the embrace or design in the way that put the guest in the center of the project. For us, is a very luxury for us. It's not a blink design. And the third one is to welcome the local community and the sustainability of the place sense. For us, this is the luxury project.
Sorry, you say put the guest at the center of the project. What does it mean?
This means that when we are designing for the guest, for them to get the best experience with the operator as well. But for us, when we design, it's for the guest.
So to feel this luxury experience, they
Exactly.
must feel that this whole thing has been done for them.
Exactly.
Excellent. Matthew, please.
So
take half of the panel time just to...
No, that's fine. Look, luxury is very personal. First and foremost, it's a personal experience understood by the guest. So I completely agree with both Felice and Sergio. Basically, if you're coming from the countryside, luxury might be all that bling and all that density. If you're coming from the city where it's bright lights and it's luxury just to feel the sand between your feet, between your toes. If you've got children, luxury might just be 2 days off from those damn kids. So to really understand luxury and to deliver it as a design, you have to understand the kind of people who are going to be coming to your hotel, who are going to be coming to your resort. And then you've got to design something around that experience. And I think that's where design and understanding your market comes into it, because you really need to understand what people are looking to escape to, what that heightened sense of living that they're looking for is, and try not to be everything to everyone in each resort. You can't do Felice's experience in the city, so don't. Look at some other kind of luxury. Look at some other kind of market. And if you're, in a resort, maybe not overload it. Maybe it's about simplifying everything and just having those beautiful views of the sunset. What WATG would talk about, just framing a view and just being in there, in that place, mindful, that wellness resort, that sort of spiritual experience. So it's no simple answer, but that's how you approach it.
And if a developer asks you to do a luxury project for him, would you ask him, okay, what kind of client are you expecting to have so that I'll design for this kind of...
It's going to be driven by both the client and the location of the resort. You can't, as an architect, I can't approach, or interior designer, landscape, I can't approach anything without seeing the site. Every site has a sense of place and specialness, and I think some of the earlier guests were talking about what's so impressive about Vietnam is we don't have to fake luxury. We don't have to fake experience. It's all here. So we have a very genuine, authentic ability to provide experiences, and it's a luxury to immerse yourself in those experiences.
Rolf, is Fusion a luxury brand or luxury experience?
It definitely is, of course it is. But indeed, as all my predecessors already mentioned, it is subjective. I mean, there is not one luxury, there's not one answer. You need to really know your market and know who you're doing it for in order to come up with a luxury resort. So indeed, you need to know the location, you need to know your potential client, you need to know your potential buyer very, very well in order to create something luxury. So overall, I guess none of us really gave an answer to the question other than it's all very subjective. I think probably a common denominator would be flawlessness. That's absolute luxury. So, and that's actually mainly operational, I would think. It's flawless service. So everything goes smooth, everything works well, everything happens in the wink of an eye. Something happens already before you even know that you want it, which is pretty much mostly on the shoulders of our operators, but as a designer, you have to facilitate that. And I think also just in the video presentation of WATG, it's mentioned quite well. Proper programming and a proper setup of the resort is done typically by the designer, which makes it possible for an operator to make it work and make it flawless. And I think that every single hotel or resort in the world which has the brand luxury will have at least will get close to that flawlessness level.
So they couldn't be a luxury if design is luxurious design, but the service is not there, or the other way around. If beautiful service, but the design is there. So I understand that both then need to match.
They have to go hand in hand, yes.
And you guys as a Fusion, how you help this process? Do you come into the designing process already to make sure that the operation will be okay? How do you work with the designer?
Well, the beauty of our organization is actually that we are an integrated company. So initially we have investment, operations, projects, and design all in one company. So I'm literally sitting next to the operations team and the projects team. And there's a lot of interaction from the very, very early stages on. Sure, I mean, we need to plan it from the very beginning, and we need to know what the operator wants. And I think that's also one of the issues that you see in a lot of projects worldwide, I would think, but especially in Vietnam, is that most of the decisions in the investment team are already made before the designer comes on board. And when a designer comes on board, it's too late in the process when the operator comes on board. So that should be really from the get-go in harmony and in sync in order to come to a proper luxury level.
Thank you, Major. Do you guys work a lot with the operator? Do you agree that the operator should come at earlier process, or sometime they just not necessary?
Sorry, what was the...
Do you work a lot with international operator in your project? Do you want them to be part of the process of designing as well?
Absolutely, and in fact, if you work with an international operator, you have no choice but to work with them because they have brand standards that are very much set. I think the most important thing is a direction is decided quite early. Chopping and changing, I mean, I've been through several projects where we've changed the operator midway through, and it's an absolute nightmare because everybody approaches it differently, just like we approach luxury differently. Different operators run their resorts very, very differently. Some have an emphasis on food, some have an emphasis on service, some have an emphasis on space, the selfie moment, the Instagram moment, etc. And some just want everything pared back, you know, absolutely pared back. So the sooner the operator's chosen and the more integrated that team is, the earlier the operator's on, the earlier the architect's on, the landscape designer, the interior designer, it's about building a synergistic team. And I know that sounds like one of those buzzwords, but it's really important. Like if you've got a team that's fighting each other, the hotel, you will notice it when you walk in, that things clash. When the team are working well together, right to the MEP engineer, the air conditioning works perfectly, the temperature's great, you know, the air pressure's fantastic, the hotel has no acoustic problems. All these little things are highly technical. You know, there's no beams that are exposed in the middle because you've got a good engineer. All these highly technical things just disappear when it's done well. And I think the architect's greatest job is to make the architecture disappear and make it all about, you know, that user touch feel experience. If you're noticing my architecture, I've probably done something wrong.
Yeah, I can only add on to that. So I completely agree with Matt. So I think it's absolutely essential that the operator is kind of like involved at the very early stage of the project. So of course, as designers, we can design beautiful spaces and so on. But in the end, they work kind of like as a symbiosis. So the design and how it's basically operated really kind of like need to meld together. And for that, it's kind of like very important that we have the input from the operator and to kind of like make it happen and make it work.
And do you work with operator in some of your projects?
Almost on all, actually on all of the projects. And if there's a project where there's actually not an operator, then, and they come at a very late stage, then it becomes kind of like very complicated. Okay, finally, thank you.
For me, luxury was to get a drink on a stage. So
yes, thank you very much.
Has been a long day for everybody.
We have more cocktail from Leisure Vin from here, just to inform the panelists.
A lot of leisure in cocktail. Thank you. Sergio, please, do you work with operator as well? And then do you find them annoying sometime, or they are just all perfect? I see from your eyes that you would like to say that, so just feel free. This is completely unscripted, this panel. Yeah? We never truly prepare it, so bear with me that I put, yes, this is not prepared. Go with the flow of the wine soon.
No, well, I need to be polite. No,
you don't, only with Radisson, which is
of course,
today and Archipelago.
Thank you. All stakeholders in a project try to push their part. But we don't see the operator as an enemy or a constraint for our project. So as I said in the beginning, the holistic process is very important, and as much as soon as possible that we can involve everybody. I use it to say, for example, usually when we are doing a project, the landscape always come after. Should not. The landscape always should to start in the concept stage with the architect, because it's part of the project. We cannot put the landscape in the second or third stage. So as soon as all stakeholders will be involved in project, more successful will be the project. This is the key.
So you need a full team there as soon as possible to be.
Of course, we have different paces, but in the end, should to be all process.
Rolf, do we need a, sorry.
No, I just want to add in, I mean, it can sometimes kind of like get a bit heated and a bit complicated. You have the designer who kind of like wants to kind of like bring in the design vision. The hotel owner who maybe has kind of like sometimes different ideas, and then there's the hotel operator. So everyone is basically has an opinion on the design, and that makes it sometimes kind of like a bit difficult. But on the other hand, this kind of like a challenging process can actually help the whole project, and has a chance to kind of like really make it something very special and unique.
Rolf, anything to add or?
Quickly, yeah, it's working, okay. Yeah, honestly, I mean, even working in the same place next to each other, it can be a headache. I mean, you have different interests also in a project, but in order to elevate a project to the next level, you need the synergy. And you need to go through these stages and sit downs and talks about the design, about the flow, about the finishes. And you might have an opinion, but the operator needs to run the bloody place for I don't know how many years, so they have a proper say in it. It's that simple.
Would you go all the way to tell your client, change designer, we can't work with them?
Well, typically I'm the designer though.
You guys
no, but for sure. We have sub-consultants that I also work with and the operator works with. And I do give my advice, so be careful, guys. And it's a valid advice, of course. I mean, we have to be able to work with external consultants as well, and the operator side, the investment side as well. And it's.
And Matthew, will you go all the way to say change operator? They just don't know what they're doing.
I've never had to do that. I have suggested that a client who doesn't have an operator in mind find one, but I haven't ever suggested that an operator be removed. And that's probably lucky because we've been lucky enough to work with good operators. The operator is incredibly important, and we need to know as designers how we can facilitate how that hotel works. And I think it's interesting, you know, talking about having landscape first. Think about how you occupy a hotel. You come in, check into the lobby in the old way, which is now changing, and I enjoyed that hybrid space idea. But what's the thing you remember? You remember the sun going down and having, you know, drinks. And that's generally done in the landscape outside the room. And we spend all this time on the room, and people spend the least amount of time there. So what's more important, the room, or how easily is it to get from your room to the bar and watch that sun go down? Or what are the experiences along the way? And that's what the operator is going to be supplying. That's what the operator is going to be, you know, obsessing about, you know, who's going to meet you on the way, who's going to greet you, who's going to talk to you, all those kinds of things. These aren't physical things that the building actually does, but it can certainly facilitate and make it work a lot better if you have those adjacencies, if you have that flow.
Thank you. You want to add something or waiting? So just moving out of the topic of operator and things, looking into today, we talk about a lot of sustainability. Vietnam need more sustainability and blah, blah, blah. We all know they will try to push it, but the reality is usually the approval is on a very high density project. And the vast majority of the project we see is we suggest to do less, we suggest to look at more, but the reality is they can do more, and it's very difficult to convince them to do less. Now, how do you play with this, being sustainable, but also play with the right density? Is there any formula that can work with the client, or any way that match can be done, sustainable and density? Rolf, you start, because it's a tough question, you need to guide us through that.
Sure. Well, let's first get something out of the way, because if you want to build 500 keys, high density is more sustainable, for sure, because otherwise, if you have only landed properties, the amount of actual footprint you create, the roads, the infrastructure you need, is definitely less sustainable than a high-rise. However, of course, the question is, do you need all these keys? That's the first question, indeed, that you're referring to, I think. And what happens a lot in Vietnam is indeed what has been also presented before, are these hybrid structures where it's a for sales product that later will be operated into a rental pool. And the market at this moment is currently that is quite easy to sell, so appealing to the buyer is quite easy. It's quick money, it's in the bag. Also, usually the local government wants to have high density because you're developing in areas that are underdeveloped. Big developments actually create the opportunity for these local provinces to build proper infrastructures. So it's also not just a demand from the developer to do, it's also a demand usually from the local government to come up with numbers for more jobs, better infrastructure for their township that they're responsible for. Coming back to the high density, I am indeed quite worried about the focus now on the buyer and not on the end user. I do definitely question the oversupply and also the kind of products that are now sometimes coming on the market. Is it going to have any appeal to the current market, and especially 10 years from now, what's going to be the appeal to tourists, domestic and international, to come to these places? And that's worrisome. So that's definitely a question that doesn't have a clear answer right now, because it's the local government, it's the developer, it's the buyer that generate this market, but the scars on the landscape are going to be permanent.
Thank you. Sergio, anything to add on that, on the scar on the landscape of Vietnam?
Yes.
We
When we talk about density and massing, we need also to understand the result that will compromise the quality. So as architect, we are an actor, and we should to discuss with our client the way and showing maybe when we are increasing the density, for sure that we are going to lose quality versus sustainability. So I think we are actors in society that we need to educate also our clients and advise, special when we have these problems also in Europe. And you can bring some examples that we did wrong and we should not do it in Vietnam. So as an architect, we need also to educate our clients to understand that density is always a lack of quality.
So if a developer comes to you and say, I want a luxury resort, can you do it for me? You say yes, and then we say, I have 600 rooms in my place. Would you walk away from that project?
No.
You say, no, I don't take it because it's just not sustainable.
No, we need to try to create something. So exactly. We work on that to not have this type of problems.
Mate,
It's a hugely loaded question, Mauro, as I knew you would. Density is often driven by the master plan. So I think you need to take a step back and look at the urban design, the master planning. Very much in Vietnam, you'll get a 1:500 master plan. It'll have a certain GFA, gross floor area, I think everybody knows, approved, and the client will have paid a price on that block of land based on the amount of developable area, and will need to return that. So that's number one. Like, if the master plan's wrong, it's almost too late to fix it, because unfortunately that's what the land's been purchased on the understanding of. So turning around and fixing it after the 1:500 approved, and probably the land has changed hands, is going to be extremely difficult. It's not impossible. Sometimes you can get the right product mix and break it down into a lighter touch. And you can do what Bill did, rent the rooms at 2,000 a night instead of 150 a night. The second thing is that the same reason Sergio won't walk away. Just because we've got a nasty design challenge, that's actually when it's our time to stand up and do something. That's when we start looking at, bringing more air into the property, more light into the property, looking at integrating landscapes. Looking at things like, I was really impressed by the hybrid talk by Quo. Looking at things where we multi-use rooms, so we don't need to be so heavy-handed, and we can actually bring in something a bit more sustainable, a bit more usable year-round, and looking at different usage patterns. Not every hotel has to be the same, and I think there's this thought that every 300-key hotel looks like every other 300-key hotel, and it's just not true. They can occupy the same footprint, the same height, and it's still a remarkably different hotel. But it needs to be conceived of, thought about, and you need to have that team on board, because you need that singular vision.
Felice, you on sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, not every developer actually is looking for like a luxury property. So if someone comes and wants kind of like a 800 or 900 key hotel, then they're maybe not necessarily after the luxury. So I mean, I'm not a big fan of these big hotels, but at the moment in Vietnam, it's kind of like still kind of like where the trend is going to. I think there's a lot of people in the last 20 years which didn't travel as much. I'm not talking about in Vietnam, but mainly, for example, also China and India. And there will be like a lot of masters on people which are traveling and which are going to travel more. And this one you have to put somewhere. I'm not really saying that this is kind of like the right way to go, but this is at the moment kind of like what developers have in their mind. I believe that in the future the trend kind of like will change, and that people who maybe today kind of like very happy in these 800 room hotels, in the future they will look for kind of like something more small, something more individual, something more individual. But for now, that's basically what we have with a lot of, let's say, people coming and becoming travelers.
If I may jump in, I definitely think there is and there will be room for these massive developments. They just need to be planned almost on a national level, I would say. These integrated resorts with a selection or a variety of typologies in hotels, with massive facilities like water parks, like safaris, that will work. That will work. But right now it's scattered all over the country, and sometimes you have these massive projects right next to these cute little resorts. It's mainly a planning issue on a very large scale. I think what's happening with some of the projects, what Vinpro is doing, what Novaland's doing, what the Hotram Strip is doing, some of these projects will definitely have a long-lasting life and a successful life. There's room for that. But right now, sometimes when you enter Cam Ranh or enter a newly developed site, there's these massive, massive structures not properly planned with their neighbors next to very cute low-rise resorts, and that generates massive issues. That's never going to work. So, and that's a planning level that's currently not existent in Vietnam, and that really needs to come to being, where you sort of allocate areas. Okay, this is for low density, low footprint resorts and facilities, and here you can go high density with high facilities. That has to be planned on a higher level, and it's very difficult as a designer or as a developer even to do something about that.
Can I just jump in and say, sustainability isn't just about, and I think everyone knows this, about throwing green trees all over your building. There's a lot more to sustainability. Some of it's about efficiency. Sometimes the most sustainable thing you can do is in fact high density, because what you're doing is you're saving land space. If you do a big blown out, strung out resort that's only four stories high, that takes up a lot of land space. So, you know, when we are looking at those master planning, you know, if we look about those areas that maybe don't have the natural beauty, that maybe are, you know, rocky outcrops or you know, brownfield sites within a larger development, that's where we want to concentrate the density. And that decision in itself can be sustainable, because what that's doing is saving the green space, the streams, the unique experiences in their natural state. So I think we need to have a broader view of sustainability, not just as, oh, I'm living in a tent on the beach, I'm sustainable. Actually, you might be, you know, impinging on virgin forest. So there does need to be a broader view, and we do need to have that ability to step back, and I agree, it needs to be at a much greater level, and that's where I think the urban design comes in. Now, then as we go into the smaller, we do the best with what we've got, which I think is what you're saying. So, but let's understand, sustainability is not just environmental too, it's economic. You know, every time we rebuild a hotel, we're destroying the environment anyway. So we want the hotels to survive. We want the operators to make money. We want the developers to make money. So that's sustainable as well. You need economic, you need social, you need environmental. All those things have to tie together, even governmental, which is the fourth arm, which is that development and urban planning that we're talking about.
Mauro, just to be gentle remind that we have now around 10 minutes left, and Lee Yavin is so kind to start serving wine for people in the room. So please enjoy the 10 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Yun, for your gentle reminder to us. So if any question here pop up in this panel, please feel free to just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap up with asking my panelists here, how tough is to work in Vietnam with Vietnamese developer? Do you get the right brief from them? Do they help you to actually do the right things? Or would you suggest them to just change the way they work to get much better result out of that? Felice.
I think that very much depends on the developers. So there are developers who have kind of like a very clear idea on what product they want to develop. So they come up with like a very detailed brief. They often come together with the operator already, and that makes things kind of like very easy. But often developers
Sorry,
also...
Felice, but does not kill your creativity too much?
No, the brief not necessary, because a brief is basically just kind of like listing down what the operator actually wants to do. So it's not about design, it's not necessarily about style or anything, it's really just about, okay, what do I want to have in terms of hard facts. But very often the projects are kind of like so much in a rush, and that developers maybe not even have time to actually prepare. And so it comes kind of like very quick, okay, next week we need to start, we have this project, 200 room hotel, let's get started. Yes, and we have to, okay, start what? So what we then do if there is no brief from the developers is that we actually create a brief for them. So we have over the years kind of like gained the experience on what actually a hotel needs, what the product needs, what the resort needs, and we kind of like bring it down on paper. So there's no design yet, it's really just kind of like listing down the facts and say, okay, how many rooms you want, what do you want in the room, what kind of like bar do you expect, what is about the, how many reception counters and so on. And we come back to the client before we even kind of like start one single line in terms of drawing and say, this is the brief which we prepared for you, so please review what you think, and that becomes the starting point, and that's really a key to actually make a design. Without that, I think you can't even start.
Please.
Let me tell you about the design brief, if I made a comparison. I'm not an architect, I'm a chef. You need also a recipe. You need to know your ingredients, even you are outdoor chef or something very special, signature. For us as architects, we need also design brief. Sometimes, because it's a new market in Vietnam, some clients, some developers, they don't have this expertise or a team to support. Is why Savills sometimes enter in a very well way to support them. Also, the architects should not only to receive, they should to be part of the brief design. And returning back again, all architects need a design brief, as the chef need a recipe. This is simple like that.
Portuguese food.
Yes.
How hard is it to work in Vietnam? It's a double-edged sword. Vietnam's an emerging market. I mean, if you want everything to be directed and well-known and a known quantity, I can go back and work in Australia and I can do one project a year and it's going to pretty much turn out like everybody thought it was going to turn out 2 years ago. If I want to exercise my creativity and I work with some clients who maybe are, for want of a better word, naive, new to the market, naivety can breed amazing creativity because they're not caught down in that sort of classical mess of like, this is how a hotel's done, you know. They're open to new ideas. So sometimes when we would work with some of the bigger brands, our creativity, like you say, is somewhat limited. That said, there's always opportunities within that. It's really exciting. You know, the hotel's going to work. There's always great things to do. However, when you're working with a newer brand or a newer developer or even a newer site, there's great opportunities. So how hard is it to work? Yeah, sometimes we work with almost no brief. I've literally been told I've got 5 acres of land. So that's not a brief. It's like, well, it's my brief. Start. So, you know, these things do happen. And yeah, sometimes it's too hard, but sometimes it's an amazing opportunity. You just might walk onto that site and go, look, there's no brief. This is an absolute nightmare, but how can I say no to this piece of land? You know, how can I not be involved in this? How is I as a designer, or my team, I should say, as designers, not want to be involved and turn this, you know, extract the potential from this land in a sustainable, beautiful, experiential way. So, yeah, it's hard sometimes, but it's, you know, nothing worth having is not worth working hard for.
I agree with Matt on this one. I think as many things in Vietnam, the development process is quite organic, I would call it. And there's definitely not always a clear brief in place. And the design process, the design will change a lot along the way in many steps. And as already mentioned, time is from the get-go already very limited. So going through these changes is not easy. But I think so there's benefits to it. I mean, you do have a lot of freedom. With no brief, you can suggest things that nobody might have ever thought about. At the same time, of course, the pressure on delivering a product with so many changes along the way in such a short timeline will do damage to the final product. So it has its pros and cons.
Thank you everybody. I think it's 6:30, so we are only, I think, 30 minutes late. It was 6 o'clock, we recovered, I don't know. But thank you very much to all the panelists today. Thank you for that good discussion, and thanks for having a few drinks with me. I hope this will keep going for the whole Oscar night later on. Jung, do you close the conference or I do?
Okay, let me close it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Cheers to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Rolfie doesn't like us to drink with.
I would like to say thank you again for our sponsor, our partner, for your contribution, and also everyone here for staying with us until now. So it's time for us to rebuild the hospitality, to reinvent the way we do business, and also to reconnect for the future. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, and obviously thank you to my team, which is some in the front, some in the back, because we are all here for them. They've done an amazing job. I don't even need to say that. Thank you, Myung.
Yes, we have the food and drink in the breakout room on the left side. in the terrace and outside as well, served by Lee Vin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. See you at the Oscar night.